right, we're live.
Okay, and is it 1 o'clock yet? I guess we can get started then.
Sure thing.
And this is being broadcast out on Channel 3?
Channel 3, the city's website, and Facebook.
Okay. So for those of you out there that may be listening, you can see the slide. It's a strategic planning kickoff retreat for the city of Manhattan. And I guess the first thing on our agenda is introductions of everyone, correct?
Yes.
So, I guess I'll start. I'm Win Butler. I'm currently serving as a city mayor. And I'm not sure how we do the rotation here because I can't see all the various people, but let's just go through the commissioners, next.
All right, I'm Aaron Estabrook, City Commissioner.
Okay, then Linda, you're out there.
I am. Yes, I'm not muted. I couldn't find me to unmute me, but Linda Morse, and I'm a city commissioner entering my almost 6th year.
Okay, and then I guess is Usha out there with us? Usha ready?
Yes, Yes, glad to be here this afternoon. I'm City Commissioner Yusha Reddy.
Okay, and then we've got Mark Hadisall left.
Mark texted me, he said he'll be about 5 or 10 minutes late, so he'll be here shortly.
Okay, so I guess you can go next, Jason, and go through the city staff.
Well, you might want to hit Aaron first. Go ahead, Aaron.
Aaron went, I think.
Aaron did.
Did he go?
He did already.
I'm still here.
I joined a little late. So yeah, Jason Hilger is Deputy City Manager.
Ron Fear, City Manager.
Okay, and I guess if that's all the staff we have, then
We have a few others. So Jared Wassinger, Assistant to the City Manager. Some other folks in our office are joining us. Kristen Dolph, our Management Assistant. Vivian Uccello, our PIO. Brenda Wolf, City Clerk.
okay, and then I guess next will be the crew that's really running the show here today.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm Jamie Green with Planning Next. Sarah?
Yes, Sarah Bongiorno with Planning Next.
Cyril Viola with Planning Next.
Okay, and so at this point, I guess the next thing is strategic planning, and the next folks should take it from there, I take it.
Yeah. Jared, did you have anything that you wanted to share here at the beginning?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah, I can. I mean, just to kick things off before we hand it off to Jamie, Sarah, and Cyril, we entered into that contract with Planning Next on the 5th, January 5th. So we've been working quite hard and been having weekly meetings for the last couple weeks. City staff has been sending a lot of information to Planning Next so that they can do a deep dive into the community, understand community data points, how our city runs from department standpoints to financial aspects. We've, as you know, in the commission approved creating the Community Project Committee. Their first meeting is going to be broadcast live on Thursday, February 4th at 6 p.m. So we're anxious to get some information out to them as well and get them oriented through the process. We're in the final stages of finalizing a kind of a staff technical committee that's going to also meet with Planning Next throughout the course of this process, this 8-month process. And then we're finalizing some of the staff interviews that Planning Next can get with certain departments and really start to understand their needs, their goals, their projects that are on the horizon as they really finalize this environmental scan that they're going to touch on today. But, this is really the opportunity between Planning Next and the City Commission. It's kind of your guys' retreat to talk through some of this framework and these big steps. City Manager's Office is here, obviously, to jump in if there's questions or if we can help provide clarification. But I know Jamie, Sarah, and Cyril are looking forward to the dialogue between all you five today. And that's pretty much all I got. So.
All right, Jerry. Great. So I have a couple of things I wanted to share before we, get into the substance. First of all, is that we're really grateful to be helping you, and we've been grateful for the time that the commission and staff has given us to help us learn about your community. We've learned, quite a bit in the last few weeks, but we don't, arrive here today thinking we know you inside and out. And we're hoping that today's time together will help us, learn if we're on the right track with things that we're starting to think we're understanding, but also help us understand where you are from some policy direction. We've got quite a ways to go, so there's nothing that we're sharing here today or nothing you'll share with us that is like the definitive direction or the definitive insight. At least that's how we're viewing it. So we have a combination of substance to present to you, and then we want to integrate that with some interactive, conversation. However, part of this that feels like a presentation, if you have a question or a comment as Sarah, Cyril, or I go through this, please, get our attention. If you want to, raise your hand literally, or, using the software, you can do that, but please don't feel like you need to sort of wait until we take a breath, because that may be a while on some of these sections. So hang in there. So what we wanted to do here, first of all, is sort of the setup. It's our understanding that the city government has not undertaken a strategic planning process like this before. So there, it's not like some communities where it's just a matter of updating. There is a lot of planning experience, but also a culture of doing this kind of work. So we take the work even more seriously here, because we think that we're helping you set a precedent for what strategic planning should be like. From our interviews, we know that some of you have experience, or you've been exposed to other strategic planning processes. So you have those points of view that you're more than welcome to share with us. But we just want to talk about sort of like getting level set here on the planning, the strategic planning work. And then, it's 4 hours, so it's a lot. So we will take a couple of breaks here. But, at some point we want to talk about the environmental scan highlights and kind of get your reaction to that. Like, is any of this surprising? Did we miss looking into something? We want to share that. And then we would like to spend some time at the end, from your perspective, from this particular day at this particular point in the process, begin to frame from your point of view some direction that we ought to be thinking about. So that's our agenda. Are there any questions or on that? Okay. So before we get into the detail, I'm just curious, sometimes I think I'd like to be able to read people's minds, and other times I'm really clear I don't want to be able to do that, but I can't do that. But I would really love for you to take just a couple minutes here and think about what we're getting ready to embark on together. And I'd love for you, in one word, tell me how you're feeling this afternoon about launching this strategic planning process. In one word, how are you feeling about launching the strategic planning process? So I'll call on you here in a minute, but just jot something down here that just comes to mind. Okay, now there's there's 5 of you, so we shouldn't have any problem with redundant words, but only use one word once. So if somebody takes your word, you're gonna have to think quick. So Mayor, can we start with you in a word?
Yeah, I figured you'd try to start with me. I'm just gonna say I'm leery of the process.
Oh, well, we want your honest opinion. That sounds honest, although not particularly inspiring at this point, but we'll take Leary. All right, Commissioner Reddy.
Excited. I'm looking forward to what we can do for the future.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioner Estabrook.
Timely. I think this is the right time.
Great. And Commissioner Morris.
I'm going to say focus.
Focus.
I'm encouraged about having some focus in the future.
Great, thank you. Now, do we have our other commissioner who's joined us yet?
Looks like Mark just joined on his phone.
Mark, are you there?
If I had to guess, he's walking into his car right now, so.
Okay, all right. Well, we don't know when he'll join us, so let's go. So Sarah, could you read back the 4 words that we have?
Yes, we have leery of the process, excited, this is the right time, and focused.
Great. So I would like to spend just a couple minutes, like maybe understanding a little bit more about that. And I think Commissioner Estabrook talked about the timing. Could you elaborate just a little bit about what you mean by that? Like it's the timing of this?
Meaning that we have it's kind of a crossroads opportunity. We're at an intersection of a lot of different things that we could be doing or should be doing, but we haven't established our priorities, so there isn't necessarily a need to unwind things, but this is the time that the community is thinking about that and the frustrations they might have or the excitement they might have, and just kind of putting those into priorities and words and a strategic plan. There's engagement, people are interested. This is the right time to kind of get that consensus.
Great, thank you. Mayor, could you tell us a little bit about your sentiments here about being leery of this? What did you mean by that?
I'm just not sure what we're gonna end up with. You know, I'm used to, you know, like we talked earlier, I'm used to, you know, my own framework of how this works because I'm tainted by my military experience. And so I'm just not really sure what we're gonna end up with, you know, with as, what we will have as a final product.
Okay.
And whether it will be useful or not, and that's what my main concern is.
Yeah, those are the only 2 options. So, but we want to work hard. We want to work hard with all of you to make sure that we get to that usefulness, you know, part. So if, you know, all of you have a role, but, you know, if with your leeriness, I think, you know, we want to understand as we're going along about how we can make you less leery as the project continues. Commissioner Morris, would you care to elaborate on your word just a little bit?
Yes, my word was focus or focused.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of things that our community would like to do, and there are lots of, we're pulled in different directions. 1, to hold down the property taxes, 2, to build, you know, open up all of our recreation facilities for the coming, in the future, because we have good ones. We want to be the kind of community that people want to come and stay in, be here, and attract other people who maybe, who just visit. We want to be kind of all things to all people. I think we're a wonderful community. I think we're very progressive thinking. We don't wait for somebody else to lead. We jump out there and take some chances, and for the most part, those work out.
Yeah.
So I am, but in the future, because of money, and it's all of the other forces of the economy and the federal and state policies and the tugs of war that happen on those levels. We don't really have that here, thankfully.
Right.
But there are forces here that could pull us apart too. And I think we usually go forward in a good way. And it's okay to disagree. I don't mean that
Right.
in a really bad way, as long as it's on a project or, we can differ. On the other hand, we don't have enough money to do everything that we see. We can't, everything that glitters, we can't embrace. So I am interested in trying to figure out what those are that we really need to follow up on. Do we follow up on concrete always at the expense of some other things, or do we sacrifice some concrete in order to do some recreation? I mean, we've done that, but we can't afford all the recreation. So how do we make those choices?
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Set priorities and be strategic in our decisions.
No, that's helpful. And what I was going to say is that's consistent with what we heard in a number of our interviews about the need to have priorities in this process. You just can't boil the ocean here with ideas. So Commissioner Reddy, your word was excited or excitement.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think this will be one of the first times for a strategic plan where we will have community involvement as well as internal involvement. So I'm looking forward to finding that balance between community needs and staff and internal needs. And I think that's the mesh I'm looking for, and people being engaged in this process and getting excited about being part of the strategic plan for the city. I think it makes it more of a community spirit where everybody can take ownership of it.
Great, thank you. Right, well, I appreciate you doing that. All right, so that insight about where we're starting today with you and how you're feeling is helpful. So I think Sarah's got the next item here.
Yeah, so as Jared said, we've been at this for several weeks now, and we've done quite a bit. As you know, we are going to run down through a list here just to give you a little bit of context about what we've been working on. So we conducted individual city commission interviews with each of you over the past week and a half. We have developed a draft project identity, which is a name and logo for this process. And I'm going to share a little bit about that process and what we came up with for the draft logo a little bit later. We also have developed some initial website content and participated in training on the platform. We are going to be utilizing the Bang the Table contract and platform that you all have established for ongoing public engagement. So this is really, from my understanding from Jared, the first chance to really test drive that. So we're excited to be part of that. We've gathered background data, studies, and reports, and really, began this environmental scan. And we're going to talk more about that, later, the environmental scan. But it's, an evolving body of work that involves data gathering, reviewing, and analysis. We prepared, administered, and analyzed an employee survey that had some sort of specific questions to kind of get us some initial thinking from the staff. So we're going to share a little bit about that later. We supported Jared on establishing the community committee and the staff technical committee, and we're gonna talk a little bit about them later as well and their roles. We've mapped out the process. We started to set some target dates, looking out, for the public engagement, and looking to involve the entire community, starting sometime in March. And we've developed a process diagram that we hope will help start to communicate that. And then we've established weekly coordination calls with Jared and sort of worked to set up the infrastructure for managing this process. We're on a fairly swift time frame here, working to try to get some recommendations near when you guys are doing some of your budgeting work in the summer. And so we're on a track for that. So we're going to be managing this pretty tightly. Okay, Jamie, I'll pass the baton back over to you. You're on mute, Jamie.
Someday I'll not do that. So we want to talk a little about when we think about a strategic plan, what is in our minds, and what's the nomenclature that we use, because we know a lot of the terms that we use are used differently by other people and vice versa. But anyway, the city of Columbia has been a client for a number of years, but the mayor down there said something recently that just really struck us about communities really, like, why do they exist, and we have a strong view that this is really about the people and serving the people, and what are communities if not a platform for human potential. So anyway, we just felt like this may be a good time to sort of share, like, ultimately what it is that we're trying to do here. So you go ahead, Sarah. So we think about the strategic plan as being an opportunity to pause, take stock, and define the future of a community or an organization. And it is also a place where once you have a vision, mission, values, goals, specific actions, they get memorialized in this particular document and become not only memorialized but institutionalized in the way that the community does its work. We think that, and I guess this is what Commissioner Reddy was talking about, that a strategic plan, I mean, you could do this all internally, the staff could do it, the commission could do it, but you've chosen in your process here to make sure that the values and the insights of people who live, work, try to raise a family in the community also have input. We think that makes ultimately for a better plan. We also know that there are strategic plans that really just serve broader community needs, but in this particular case, it's about creating this plan for city government, the organization, and the priorities that are needed in order to make good decisions. And at the same time that it's looking at the government, we also believe it's going to identify opportunities out in the community that the city may have absolutely nothing to do with, or could be a partner. But there's things out there that we think come out of this process that makes Manhattan better in the future, but maybe just completely community oriented. Next, Sarah. So we have a set of definitions, and these may come in more use as we start to develop the substance, but we have a definition for a vision, and hopefully maybe some of this is obvious to you, but it really is at the highest level of general statement of expression of the community's future. It should be informed by the values and set a tone for specific recommendations, and you'll have to decide at some point whether this vision is a very simple one-sentence statement, or, as you no doubt have seen in other places, 5, 6, 7 sentences about what it is. I think it's really important that you have a vision that's crisp, unique, and authentic, to Manhattan. We think there's also a mission statement that gets, as part of a strategic plan, that is really used by the organization to drive its purpose for being. And again, we think about this in simplistic terms about what's really driving the organization. We think that the vision in particular gets buttressed by a series of goals. And our definition of a goal is a desired outcome expressed in simple terms. It doesn't say how something's going to be done or when it's going to be done or who's going to do it. It just articulates the outcome. A goal can be then further subdivided into statements of intended direction that then organize the actions, which is the more specific parts of the recommendation. And we think about actions being projects, policies, or programs. If they're not one of those, they're probably an objective or a goal. But we'll be very intentional when we start drafting that the goals don't get too specific and the actions don't get too general in what we're doing. But this is our sort of structure. And if you were to stack it in a diagram, it's like a pyramid with the simple sort of capstone of a vision with a mission, goals, and a set of objectives that put the actions into their own sort of lane, if you will. But that's how we think about the structure. Can you go back just a second, Sarah? So I don't know, I'll pause here for a minute and see if anybody has any questions, or, you know, this doesn't match up with how you think about the hierarchy or the nomenclature. You know, this would be a good time to know. All right, hearing none, then let's go forward. Sarah?
Yes, thank you. So with that sort of background in mind, we're gonna focus in now on the approach, you know, for Manhattan here. So we've laid out the sort of who's in the planning process, and we want to just talk through this really briefly. I think this is probably known to you, but you know, the elected officials over here about making decisions and adopting the final plan. We have put together this community committee. They're going to help us a lot with the outreach and engagement to make sure that we're getting a broad perspective when we go out and get, you know, community engagement. And then they're going to provide ongoing input, feedback, and insight throughout the process. We've got the general public. Also, again, Jamie mentioned that, you know, this could be done internally, but, you know, we're happy that you're reaching out to the public and hearing from them. So there'll be touch points with them throughout the process. And then Jared mentioned the stakeholders group. We are working with Jared to do some more targeted input for some key stakeholders within the community. And we'll be doing some sort of small group focus groups with them. And then of course the staff, besides, you know, project management, providing local knowledge and city organization, kind of helping us understand the inner workings of the city. You know, that staff technical committee is going to be, you know, a key part in that. And then of course, us as the consultants, we're really here to facilitate and bring, you know, process expertise to help guide you through this process. And then it's also helpful to think about that maybe the sort of, there's two critical inputs. You know, there's this qualitative input, right? So this is the intuition of, you know, an insight from you all, the general public, the staff. And then there's the quantitative, which we're going to start providing some of that today and continue to sort of build up that body of work. But that's the, you know, that's the data, that's existing conditions and trends, what's happening in the community relative to demographics, city statistics, budget, those kind of things. And so it's helpful to think about these two inputs as, you know, they are being developed, and we're hearing from each one, and then they come together to really create a solid plan. Having one without the other is, you know, is not really the way we want to do the work. So, so this is the process diagram, and while it's still conceptual, I think maybe it's helpful to start to understand, you know, down here at the bottom, we've got the major phases of work and the buckets of some of the tasks. And then up above here is sort of who and how and why how we're going to get people involved. So here we are over here in January at the City Commission retreat as part of this sort of preparation phase as we're starting to get acclimated and hear from everybody. We're going to be meeting next week with the community committee and the following week with the staff technical committee. So this again is part of orientation, hearing some initial input. And then when we get into this analysis and recommendations phase here, we got 3 months where we're going to have, you know, an initial round with the public in March, another one we're planning in May, and 3 touch points with the community committee and the staff technical committee. And while we've decided to create these 2 separate committees, because they do have a little bit different focus, you know, at some point, and we're not sure yet when this will happen, but maybe April, maybe May, we see these coming together in some joint work sessions. So as we start to get some recommendations pulled together, we think it's going to be helpful to get everybody in the room and really start to talk through priorities, and especially if there's maybe some differing views, right? There's some different priorities coming out. We're going to have to figure out a path forward. So we want to kind of hash that out and have a place to do that. And then of course in June, we'll be back with you in sort of another retreat towards the end as we have some recommendations formulated before we wrap things up to have another discussion point and another last committee meeting. Of course, I think we mentioned this before, this is not the only time we will be with you. We know you have standing meetings, and we already talked to Jared about there may be just times that, you know, he gives an update. There may be the times that we come onto your agenda at one of your work sessions or meetings to provide an update or get some input. So we'll have some regular touch points through your your standing meetings, but we have another retreat here at the end of the time together. And then I think here at the end of June, the goal is to have, you know, some draft recommendations, have the content, have some direction, have these priorities and some specific actions. And while it may not be all packaged up and pretty and looking like a report, we want to have some information that you guys can then use as you start to do your budgeting for the next year. And then what we'll do here in, you know, July, maybe a part of August, is really finalize the plan. So that's putting it all together, packaging it up, getting the appendices pulled together and that kind of thing. So I'm going to pause here for a second and see if you have any questions about this or any comments.
Linda Morse, I'm curious about what your plan is for the public engagement.
Yeah, so we haven't talked too much about that yet with Jared. We were trying to see what, you know, based on the pandemic, what's going to be the safest and best, you know, way to do this. But, you know, we are targeting kind of middle of March to do something. Now, this could be some safe in-person meetings where we're testing some stuff that we've developed with you and the committee, getting some feedback from folks and hearing from them in a safe in-person meeting. It could be some a virtual, similar to what we're doing now, a virtual public meeting. We've done quite a few different types of virtual meetings and they've all been, you know, successful. I think one thing that we will bolster whatever we're doing either in person or virtually. We will have, you know, using the Bang the Table platform, we will have online engagement available for, you know, a couple weeks. So even if people can't, you know, get involved and make a virtual meeting or make an in-person meeting, there'll be a way for them to provide their input through the website. And so what we really, again, like we don't know the exact approach yet, we'll be figuring that out over the next several weeks. You can be assured that it's going to be, you know, broad, and that we'll have multiple ways that people can get involved. And we'll think through making sure that we can get a diversity of input.
Hadisal here for a second. So is that there will be community involvement potentially outside of the community committee then too? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the community committee is one part of that, right? They're a selected group and they're a subset, cross section of the community. So they're going to provide some of that ongoing input, but we do have more what we call general public input at 2 times in the process as well.
This is Commissioner Reddy. You said in your previous slide, I believe, targeted populations. How many of those are you considering? And can you tell me a little bit about who has already been recommended to you by our city staff, just in case we have others that we think you should probably also look into?
Yeah, Jared, jump in here and help me out. I know you've been working on the list, but we've got some of the usual suspects, like getting a small group of folks from K-State and the chamber. And then there's going to be some of these groups that will be sort of staff groups. But Jared, can you jump in and share a little bit about what you guys have put together?
Yeah, so if you're referring to the more stakeholder group piece that Sarah had mentioned, we are looking at creating those groups and reaching out to folks in charge of those areas like the Chamber of Commerce, Kansas State University, USD 383. Other areas come to mind like MATC and Fort Riley, just because they play such a big role. But then also I think Jamie and Sarah have touched on a lot of how we can reach out to our community project committee and look at the makeup of that and ensure that we're reaching the right amount of people. And if there are groups that are less represented, that we make a solid effort to go out and find those groups and individuals, probably during these public rounds of engagement, to ensure that we're making sure that they're involved in the process.
Yeah. And one of the things too, you should, I think is important, and I think this is what Jared was alluding to, is that some of these may be organizations, but some of them may be more demographic groups. You know, I know that we're a little bit light on certain demographics that we wanted to reach on that committee, so there may be a targeted group that we bring in that sort of helps us with that, whether it's a certain age group or a certain other demographic. So that's something that we're thinking of as well.
Linda Morse, I would like to be sure that you reach a representative of the aging community. And there is an area agency on aging organization here, and they do have really good statistics, and they lobby with the legislators, and so that's a segment that's only about 10%, I think, of the population. But as you pointed out in your materials, that's a growing segment. So I know that a lot of people only think of 18 to 25-year-olds when they think about Manhattan, or the young professionals, or, you know, but I also think that the aging group is one that needs, we have needs here in the community, and we need to be able to, I don't know that they're going to know our needs, but they can certainly provide you with the data, and that's then drawing the conclusions maybe is what you do best.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner. That's really important. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this project identity that I mentioned earlier. One of the first things we did once we hit the ground running on January 6th was have a meeting with Jared, and he invited Ben and Vivian in to have a brainstorm with us. And so this project identity is really a name for the process. It's supposed to, you know, capture the spirit of the process and attention of the community, and it results in sort of a easily recognizable graphic representation or logo. There's some example there at the bottom of the screen there of some previous projects. Here are some ways it gets used. You know, on the right-hand side there is a project business card that we created. On the left side, something we called a rat card. It's kind of like a postcard. You can see the color scheme and the logo and how that all kind of hangs together as a campaign. Here's another example. We got to do some fun stuff here in Westerville for their community plan. We had T-shirts and, you know, balloons and a chalk stencil and all kinds of stuff. So the project identity really sets this tone, and it lets people know whenever they see this, you know, logo that this is about, you know, this is about the strategic plan. So the process, quickly, you know, we just did conduct a brainstorm with staff, and we introduced, you know, a little of this background, but we really spent most of the time hearing from them about keywords, messages, imagery that represent sort of the process and the community. We developed a branding memo then with some name options for staff consideration. I know Jared kind of shopped that around a little bit. We finalized a name and a tagline. And then once we had that name and tagline, we designed some graphic representation options. And then we've got sort of a final draft logo design chosen with input from staff, which I'll share with you, you know, in a minute. And I know that besides Jared and Ben and Vivian, Jared did, you know, share where we kind of landed with the department heads and got their, you know, input and sort of blessing on it. So we feel good that people think this is representative. So, you know, real quick on the brainstorm, you know, for this, some of the highlights, some of the, you know, raw notes was that, you know, we really need to find out what matters most to people, you know, sort of like, what do we want to be? Maybe we're at this crossroads. We need to figure out, you know, our path forward. So these are some of the, you know, sentiments that we use when we move forward into this. And so this is the mark. This is the logo that and name that has been created. It's called Crossroads MHK. Shape what matters. Choose our path. And of course, the sort of half circle graphic there at the top is meant to be kind of indicative of the Flint Hills. So it kind of grounds it within the community, but you've got these pathways, and the sort of negative space here of the little arrow over the O is kind of indicative of, like, you know, forward motion, moving forward. So so this is kind of where we've landed as of like this morning. And so we wanted to share it with you and see if you have any questions or comments on it. But we think this is you know, will be a nice color palette and a nice graphic to sort of brand this process.
This is Commissioner Reddy. I don't know if you were pausing for comments.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that I like the logo and everything. I just wanted to make sure that the colors kind of go with our flag colors, just to be consistent. I don't know if that matters, but since we have blue, green, and white as our colors, we don't have yellow, but just for consistency purposes. Otherwise, I think it's on the right track, and I like it.
Okay, good.
I think it looks pretty awesome. I like that idea, and I'm colorblind, so you can put whatever color makes the most sense.
Great, thank you.
I think the staff does a good job of pulling logos together, and I don't have anything major. It looks fine.
Okay, great. Well, if there's no other comments, we will work to finalize this logo early next week. We'll put together a simple logo guide that we can share, you know, back with staff and you all and the community committee, because we're going to really they're going to help us get the word out. So as they can put the logo into newsletters or in emails and things like that, we'll provide them the logo files and the guide about with the colors and things like that. So we will start using this you know, as soon as we can get it finalized. You'll start to see things skinned in the color. PowerPoints and things will come out branded as, you know, anything that is about the strategic plan will be branded in this you know, in this color palette and in this mark. Okay.
Sarah, is there I mean, maybe you said this and I missed it, but there is a larger communications plan. I mean, this is just one piece
Yeah.
of a larger awareness building, right?
Yeah. So we think of this as one of our tasks is sort of building up this awareness campaign. And so one of the things that, you know, we'll work through with the community committee, maybe a little bit in their first meeting, you know, is trying to understand the different communication channels. And we haven't really dived into this yet, but I will connect with Vivian as well and to understand which different channels are available within the city. But we'll be putting together a sort of larger communication strategy that, again, this was one piece of it. The website is a big piece of it, you know, understanding how you all use current, you know, the social media and other print and online media sources so that we can try to hit a wide variety and a, you know, a lot of different communication channels. You know, one thing about this one to get, you know, to really deliver people and get people to participate in the process, you know, we really do think of there's sort of two arms to it. One is the sort of general communications, and that's, you know, just spreading the word through traditional and media and social media and, you know, even putting up posters around the buildings or in your downtown and things like that, handing out postcards or project business cards, that kind of thing. And then there's this outreach component where that's where the community committee is going to come really, you know, help us out and get involved. And that's the personal invites. You know, that's them with their network saying, hey, I'm involved in this. You should really get involved too. We want to hear from you. And so they work hand in hand to try to deliver as many people as we can to the process. You know, we can't like force people, so to speak, to get involved, but we can sure make it, you know, make sure they're aware and make sure that they have the choice to get involved and make it easy for them to get involved. And that's what we'll do. So one of the things that now that we've got this this mark, and I would say that part of what came out of this process as well are some sort of key messages, and even hearing through our individual interviews with each of you, we've been able to sort of fine tune these key messages a little bit. But we're going to be putting together an FAQ document about this process for the general public and some of these key messages to kind of, you know, get them to understand what this is about and why they should get involved and why they should care. And so we've developed beginnings of this communication plan, but we'll be working with Jared and Vivian over the next couple weeks to sort of finalize that so that we can start communicating in advance of the later March meetings. Okay. So at this point, and I think we're doing pretty good on time here. You know, if we want to take a really short break, if anybody needs a short break, but we're going to switch gears and get into the environmental scan data stuff here. So we can take just a few minutes if somebody needs to take care of something or get a drink. We can take a quick break.
Sarah, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
The Crossroads, I think there's a real estate business with that name, but they're mostly associated with Wamego. And was that all kind of vetted out that it wasn't going to duplicate or run into other logos or other?
We do. You know, we try to make sure we want to make sure that there's no other like large community efforts that would be, branded this. I know that we, one of the original marks, the logo options that we came up with was a little bit, just by coincidence, similar to the Bank of the Flint Hills logo, or one of their older logos. So we kind of moved away from a color palette and, changed a few things. I think that, again, the name with the MHK, I think, kind of pulls it in.
Specific, yeah.
Yeah, specific, but yeah, we didn't have any issues come up from anyone that's thought that would be an issue, and I don't think we think it's an issue.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody concerned if we just keep on going?
Please do.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, Jamie.
Yeah, Jared.
I will just jump in just because we have a few folks watching on Channel 3 right now, and I wanted to acknowledge the static that they're hearing. We're working with Cox as best we Cox Cable to fix that. So if you're trying to avoid that static, you can go to our website at cityofmhk.com/TV to watch this meeting live, and you'll avoid that and have a little bit more clearer audio, as well as we're broadcasting this live on Facebook, or City of Manhattan Facebook.
Great.
Getting
Thanks,
a few emails, so wanted to
okay.
tell our viewers that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared.
Great. So Sarah, in going through the environmental scan, I think the same idea applies as the first part of the agenda, that if someone has a comment or a question about any of your data, they should jump in here and interrupt us, right?
Yes. Yeah, please do. If you've got a question or something, feel free to jump in. I'll try to pause here and there so that we we can take those questions. So I think we mentioned this earlier, but this is definitely a working draft. This environmental scan is evolving body of work. We're going to continue to add to it and build it up. Right now we're sort of we like to call it a 1 inch thick, 1 mile wide. We're trying to hit a bunch of different topics and try to understand. And then if something really presents an interesting, something's going on, we want to dig in a little deeper, we can dig down in there. And so we're going to continue to build up and work on this over the course of February. And I think at some point in end of February, beginning of March, we're going to want to start to put a bow on it. We'd like to have sort of product that we can put on the website and share with the public in their public input opportunity in March. That's not to say that it is static and we can't add to it, but we're going to sort of put a little bit of a bow on it then. So for today, though, we'd like to share sort of the community scan aspects, and we've got some employee survey results that Cyril is going to present here as well. So as Jamie said, I'll try to pause, and please just interrupt if you've got questions. So, the purpose of this is really to explore these external and internal conditions and trends in order to educate. And also, as I mentioned before, it's one of these critical inputs. So it's going to inform, the strategic plan. And it really opens this conversation on key trends and conditions. And I think this idea of a conversation is really important, as there are things that you're curious about or things you want us to try to explore more. We're open to adding different topics and looking at things that are important to you that you think we need to understand, or you would like to understand, or to make good decisions. So that's really, really important. And of course, we need to remember that there's different audiences, and different components of this will be more interesting or more, important for different audiences. So obviously this, you all as elected officials, the city staff, community committee, the general public, and even we're an audience because we're learning. And so certain aspects of this, whether it's the community-wide information or the specific, sort of city statistics, different groups are going to have different ways. But I think what's important is, because they are different audiences, we want to make sure that the data is really clear and accessible, and people can understand it. So we try really hard to make it simple and easy to understand. So for right now, and this may get organized a little bit differently, but as we started to look through this stuff, we sort of put things into two buckets. We got the community side, some of the basic demographics and other aspects that are community-wide, and then we've got sort of the city scan aspects of it, understanding the structure and the organization, staffing, revenues, and all that stuff of the city. And then we've got the employee survey results, which is some sort of new qualitative information from the staff that we just conducted in the last couple weeks. So for today, we're going to focus on the highlighted topics. But I did want to just mention that, we are trying to find some community health indicators. Usha, I think you mentioned that on our one-on-one that you were interested in that. And we are going to try to, we found some countywide data, but we're going to try to, find some health indicators. We've got some community safety data as well. And then we thought we'd look at your recent citizen survey and bring out some of the highlights as well, from that. And then of course the city scan, bucket over here, we've got a lot of this started. But we know that Baker Tilly has got a draft report that has some really good information in it. So we're gonna, look at theirs and try to, reconcile this and pull some stuff in. So again, this is an evolving body of work, and this is where, we're starting. We'd like to give you a little preview today. So a few, key takeaways. We're gonna unpack some of this, so I'm not gonna go through every one, but you're continuing to grow. Your population is growing, but your growth rate has slowed down, in recent years. And something that Commissioner Morris mentioned earlier is that the older adult population is the fastest growing age group, even though you're dominated by the younger adults with the students. That is really important. The housing has really slowed down since 2014. I've got some graphs that sort of show that, and that might be indicative of being getting more towards being built out. And then there was some stuff, a few points that about cost burden and poverty level that we're still trying to sort out a little bit. It's doing data, pulling data for a university community is always a little bit tricky because the students swing some of the data. So trying to suss that out and tease that out, we're still working on some of that, but we'll talk through that. So we're going to unpack this a little bit. And again, feel free to jump in. But you do have, steady but slowing population growth. As of 2019, a little over 55,000 people in the city. And you can see here on this chart, between 2000 and 2010, the growth rate was, even with the county here, kind of on par, 17%, 13%. And then this last decade, dropped to 6%. So, you're kind of on track with the overall, county, and the state's dropped as well.
I want to make one comment, if I can just interject.
Yeah.
We got Wiley County there, but not Potawatomi County. And we've been talking about Blue
Right.
Township and the growth and everything. And so I'm not sure that, the statistics really capture everything properly, because it looks like Pot County has had all kinds of growth.
Yeah, so that's also a tricky thing since you sit in two, and we can definitely add Potawatomi County. It's just we have to somehow account for the portion, and so we can look into that. That may be something that we can try to reconcile, because you're right. If they're growing, then that swings possibly a little bit the numbers.
Yeah, and I understand the whole Potawatomi County, maybe not so much, but if you look at Blue Township and just that initial area that borders us, we supply them the water, which is what has probably helped generate the growth. And so I think that's important to add to the statistics, because otherwise we're going to lose something vital, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll dig into that and see if we can find. So I think it would be interesting if we could find some stats on the Blue Township specifically. Okay, and then this is again just a more visual, indication of the population, and then again you can kind of visually see here the growth rate was fairly plateaued, and then it dropped off here in the last decade. So again, we were interested in the impact of K-State, and so we wanted to plot the population at K-State enrollment here in the purple line, and then we've got this red line is the city. And so, you can see here they had a really, they were trending upward, then they slowed here, and then they dropped off. And you guys while you've slowed, you're still continuing to go up, so that's good. And then we've got a chart here that kind of breaks it down by the enrollment. Of course, we know that student population is dynamic, and that it fluctuates between terms. So this is not an exact science here, but we picked the fall term, and it does include undergraduates, graduates, and international students. And of course, Fort Riley is an important neighbor. It has, we got this from the Fort Riley Economic Impact Study with the numbers here of the population, and 16,000 family members. So again, it's right there next to you. It really does have an impact. And when you kind of see the numbers here and the population, you can appreciate that.
Sarah, This
Yeah.
is Commissioner Reddy. I just wanted to go back to the K-State slide.
Yeah.
I think when we look at this also, kind of like what Mayor Butler was saying about Potawatomi County, I think we need to kind of just disaggregate that information a little bit from K-State, taking into consideration what might be in Salina and Olathe campus. I think that's a 21,000 comprises of the entire university and all campuses. So
Okay, that's good.
to get a better understanding of what's in Manhattan.
Yeah, no, that's really, I'm glad you mentioned that. We work with a community college here where trying to understand what's happening in their downtown campus versus the satellites is really important. So yeah, thank you for that. We will see what we can sort out there, because
Thank you.
that's good. Okay, so you know this, Manhattan's a young community, you've got a lot of students, but again, the older adults are the fastest growing population, and it grew 49% in the last decade. And so I think, to Commissioner Morse's point, you know, we can't forget about that, the age-friendly community and the aging in place, you know, aspects and thinking will be really, really important for the city to consider in the future. This is another one that we really want to try to pull in some of the K-State data, but we haven't gotten there yet. But, you know, it appears you're growing more diverse, and you've seen some of the percentages here. But we really want to compare that to Kansas State, because we don't know if this is really just really because the students are, you know, they're getting more overseas students, and so they're driving that, or are you attracting, you know, a more diverse population outside of what's happening with K-State? So, you know, we want to try to sort this out a little bit. We think that that's, you know, that's an important component. And so that's a piece that we're still working on and trying to tease out a bit. And then this one about households, you know, the total family households, again, we're trying to, you obviously have a lot of non-family households make up your population because of the university, but they, you know, they are decreasing some from 2010 to 2019. So I think that's an important, not a lot, but a little bit, and that's a trend that I think we want to, again, in the spirit of attracting young professionals and families to the community, we want to keep an eye on that. And then the average family size grew just a little bit in that same time period. And then this was about the non-family households. So you have a lot of non-family households, you know, because of the students and the growth, has slowed a little bit on that. But again, we want to understand this comparative to Kansas State, because I think that it's continued to increase, but at a slow growth. But their population's gone down. So trying to understand that kind of, are you attracting some of these young professionals outside of, you know, the K-State students? We want to try to understand that dynamic a little bit. This is about your housing stock. So this is interesting. I love these charts where you can kind of see over time. So you're here in the red thing here. You shot up in the 70s and have a lot of housing stock from the 70s, down a little bit, but plateaued here until like the, you know, early 2000s, and then it's been on a steady sort of decline. And this 3% of housing stock was built after 2014, I think is indicative sort of maybe where you are with, you know, sort of starting to be built out. So we, you know, it's slowed down some in the last years, but I think this is also just important to understand that you have a lot of housing stock that's getting older now, and so understanding what you can do to protect that housing stock, and, you know, understand rehabilitation options and things like that for people, so you can protect your older housing stock. And, you know, Manhattan does have a mix of housing types, which is good. You know, you're predominantly with 41% single family detached, but you do have smaller and larger multifamily homes. So smaller is the sort of duplexes and small multifamily, and then the larger is the 10 or more units. And so I think that this is good. You have more housing types available in the city compared to the state, where they're more predominantly single family than you are. And I think, again, that's the student influence there driving that. But it's good to have different housing types. Again, this is another one where we want to pull in some K-State data if we can, because what's important to understand here is how much of this is really student housing. Because you could have a lot of this, it's only for students, and then you're still missing, you know, some of this housing component for you know, for other people that may want different housing options. So to understand true housing choice, you know, we need to sort of separate out or suss out the student housing. So we're going to try to work on that. And again, rental housing makes up 50% of the total occupied housing units. Again, with the students, that makes sense. But again, I think we want to try to understand this rental housing for student housing versus what's available for non-students. So again, another one where we're going to try to suss this out a little bit further and understand it and see if we can understand it for the city outside of the students' influence. The median house values and rents are higher in the city compared to the state. Although housing cost has increased, the rate has slowed down. And rent is just a little bit, you know, just a little bit different, but the housing median house value is higher in Manhattan than in the state. Employment sectors, again, this is, we're looking at not just within city of Manhattan. We pulled this data from the Greater Manhattan Economic Partnership, so it's really looking at your regional area. And so, you know, even though you got Kansas State and the Fort, which have a lot of jobs, there is there's a mix of other opportunities, and that your unemployment rate is pretty low at 5%. So who made this list was what the Greater Manhattan Economic Partnership sort of pulled and decided where's the major employers in the area as of I think it was their 2016 plan. So this is getting a little outdated now. There could be some more up-to-date data we might be able to pull in. And I think we wanted to do this because I think it just helps people visualize like the Fort and what an economic impact it is with jobs, and then K-State, and then everything else, is over here. So it kind of illustrates what I think we know, but that, you've got a lot of job opportunity, but a lot of things tied up in the Fort and Kansas State, and then kind of all other major employers are equal to that. This is looking at sectors, and again, I think this reinforces the, education and healthcare, which we're seeing this a lot in other places too, but it's grown, that sector's grown. A couple things are down a little bit, information, this other services, which is kind of more retail services and things, and this finance, insurance, and real estate is down a little bit, but otherwise most of the sectors are up at least a little bit in the last decade. The median household income is below the state level, but again, this is one where it would be nice to correct. And I saw a different number in some of the Baker-Tilly draft report, so I want to ask them. They might have corrected for the students, which would be really good to know, because obviously your younger adult population pulls that down, and so it's nice to be able to see it maybe both ways. So we're going to dig into that a little bit as well, but it's just a little bit less than the state level. And then along the same lines, we like to look at cost burden for rental and owner-owned housing. And it's pretty much on par with state trends. And of course, the rental's a little bit higher. 44% of people are paying more than 30% of their income on rent. But again, with students usually having less money, that's factoring in there. And I think this, only 22% is paying more than for their homeowners. So I think that's, and it's about on par with state trends. We wanted to, and we're going to dig into this a little bit more, but we wanted to understand, specifically for families and children, because if you look at your overall poverty rate, it looks lower than it maybe it really is, because it takes into account the students, and students sometimes don't have as much money, and so we wanted to sort of pull out just the family and sort of children under 18 to see if how if there was a poverty issue among families and children. It's pretty much on par here with the county and the state at 11% with families with children under 18, which is not too bad. This one though was kind of a little bit surprising. We found that 40% of students are eligible for free or reduced price lunches, and I know there's eligibility requirements. We thought maybe because the military families maybe got into this program automatically or something, but it looks like they must meet eligibility requirements as well. So again, I know it's a unified school district. It's Manhattan and Ogden, so that may be one of the factors. But this was something that, just given the other percent of, and I know that the poverty rate and the eligible for free lunch is not always the same, but we wanted to maybe understand this a little bit and maybe get some more data from this is data we got from the website for the schools, but maybe try to understand this a little bit more for the city of Manhattan.
Sarah, I think it's important when you start talking about poverty, and that you also consider that the Potawatomi County segment.
Yeah.
Because I believe their numbers are higher income than ours. So maybe you talk about them separately, but they're in the same category. I mean, I don't want to just do.
Yeah.
I mean, all we have is a river between us, so you know, it's not. We need to talk about the whole.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we'll be sure to pull the Potts County as well. Good. Thank you.
So we get the best picture.
Yeah.
Sarah, this is Commissioner Reddy, and that goes same for Ogden Elementary School.
Okay.
So Ogden is its own sector, although we are a unified school district. Most Ogden students live in Ogden.
Okay.
And the county staff might live elsewhere, but students usually typically live in Ogden.
Okay.
And it is the lowest income, lower than Manhattan, right, Yusha?
Exactly. I think it's near 75% to 80% that are free and reduced.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. That's helpful. That's what I was kind of wondering, is if the Ogden component here was what was, you know, creating the average. But yeah, that's helpful. We'll try to separate that out a little bit. And of course, no surprise, you're a highly educated population. You know, with the university there, that tends to be the trend. One thing about this data, though, as I mentioned before, we're in a census year, which is great. When we can get the new census information, we can update things, but that's not out yet. And because the census website's in transition, for whatever reason, some data sets are just missing right now. And so we're trying to go about it other ways, or we may have to. We've heard rumors that the new information is going to be up sometime in March, so we're hoping that's, you know, earlier March as opposed to end of March, but we'll see. So some of these numbers seem a little more extreme than they probably really are, because they're going across, since they're looking at the data since 2000, not just, we want to really look at the last decade to help us kind of understand that trend. So this is a little bit skewed, but I do think this is interesting. We'll want to see what happens when we do the 2010 to 2019 number, but this fastest growing educational attainment is associate's degree, and I know that you have a community college there that may be playing a role in that. So that's an interesting number that I want to keep an eye on once we get that updated information. Okay, so I tried not to go through that too fast, and I appreciate you guys jumping in and providing some clarity and making sure that we're looking at the Potts County component as well. You know, is there anything in here that surprised you, or any? I mean, I know we were kind of going through questions along the way, but if there's any comments or anything, you know, we can take a pause here and discuss that.
Linda Morse, I would question the number that only 50% of our housing units are rentals. I think it's a lot higher than that. And I don't know, maybe we've had a population, we have had a population, maybe a population decline, but we used to, as a standard rule, say 60%. And we've had a ton of new apartment complexes added. And so I question 50%. I don't believe that those people are buying their individual apartment units.
Okay. Yeah, let us double check that and see if there's any, again, like I mentioned with the some of that data being missing and stuff. Let me just go back and double check that.
And I'm really eager to see the new census data on rentals, because we're using 2010 data, and it has been we've had these big complexes added in the last like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, the data is all over the place. If you look at one source, it's one number. Look at another source, and it depends on who's talking, to tell you the truth. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. We're anxious too.
Hadasal here. I was surprised that they still considering our population is growing, because I thought it started when the student population started going down a little bit, that took our overall population down. And I don't know if that is a census number, if that's the city provided number, or where that 55.9 or something, because
that was an estimated number. Cyril, jump in here if I'm misspeaking, but that's an American Community Survey, so an estimated number from 2019. So again, this will be really important to get the 2020 data. But we've read quite a bit about because of when the census was happening and what happened with the pandemic and with students being sent home, that this number is going to be a little bit for university communities. It's going to be a little bit of an issue to try to make sure that things got counted correctly. So we'll have to see. But it appears from that data that even though the university enrollment has gone down, that you guys have been able to, your growth rate has slowed, but you've been able to still grow a little bit. So it's not it appears to us that it's not just completely dependent on the university, which is, I think, a good thing, but we want to probably, get that ground truth a little bit with the 2020 data.
Well, the chamber and the university kind of had that retired to the Flint Hills push about 12 to 15 years ago, trying to get K-State alums who are retiring to move to Manhattan so they could come watch football games here, and that's probably got to be part of that retiree boost, which is what we want, because most of those people who moved here had money and bought expensive houses and did a lot of stuff. So I think that general program was a huge boon, and if we could I think that's something.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because that'll drive more need for more healthcare, which will be more healthcare jobs, and eventually everybody needs more healthcare as they get older. So, yeah, we don't want to become a retirement community, and I don't think there's any concern with that. But I was a little surprised it was quite that much, but that was a push for a while. I don't know if anybody's really pushing that.
When did that? Do you know when that program started?
I was thinking it was when I was on the commission before, so it was like 2006, 7, or 8 or something. I'm not sure if Ron lit up there.
It's been around for quite a while, so well back into the 2000s. So it's been an effort. It's been overhauled, and they are still actively marketing it. They've expanded it to be trying to recruit graduates that have started businesses too. So there's a business side to that recruitment as well as the retirement side.
The way I looked at it, it really waned for a while, and a couple of years ago, the chamber and the community picked it back up again and started running with it. So it's been a real emphasis for like the last 3 years anyway.
Okay.
Sarah, this is Aaron. One thing that I think doesn't surprise me, but maybe surprising to people who look through this data set and say, it sure feels like things are not affordable, or it sure and I think a lot of that, and that high number you saw with USD 383 with the free and reduced lunch number captures some of that. And this has been a challenge of how to not just pull out the student numbers, but what Mark just talked about, how you kind of fence off some of those retirees so they're not over skewing the median wage or the income value or the house values, as that's a different type of segment from young the workforce or young professionals, and it gets captured in that families with kids under 18, but there's also plenty of people that don't have kids that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that would argue this data is not reflective of their experience. And that's the challenge, that there's kind of this underrepresented significant population in the community that doesn't come through in the census data, or it gets skewed by the transient nature of what we offer.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Aaron, and that's something that a lot of university communities struggle with, because the census and the data doesn't do a good job of accounting for that. So it's hard, it's hard to do that. So I think if we can try to find ways, sources to try to parse that out, that's something that I think we'll continue to work towards. But I appreciate that.
Sarah, I think that Aaron triggered something about affordability. There is a constant, kind of harangue, I suppose, about Manhattan housing, Manhattan as a community not being affordable, and that's why people are in are moving to rural areas around or leaving here entirely, and some commuting, and of course with virtual now, that they may not ever totally return to an in-person resident here. But I think that if you can nail something on the affordability, the reality, the real statistics, instead of just the claims that people make. Because we get wild claims. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and not to beat a dead horse, but there is data that is being used to show, if you Google the most affordable place to live, or least affordable place to live in Kansas, Manhattan shows up, and it's because of some of the data that they've selected that doesn't show the full picture, but also doesn't change the perception. I mean, it validates those claims to those people that are experiencing affordability issues. So, yeah, it's really a big deal.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we can try to provide that fuller picture, or make sure that we're representing the data in a way that isn't skewing it, but paints the reality, I guess, is what Commissioner Morris said. So, well, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, and then some of you, we asked this, I don't think we asked of all of you when we talked to you individually, but a few of you we did because we had some time, but are there other research questions? And I know we just talked through some things to look at, but are there other topics or other research questions that you would like us to look at for you?
Linda Morris, at one time, not that long ago, K-State provided some statistics about the number of their employees that do not live in Manhattan. And I know that we've had some population shifts. K-State has really had their budgets cut. They've reduced the number of employees over the last 10 years, probably longer. And so I'd be interested in, as you do this scan, I think it would be instructive for us. I know that NBAF has their figures, and they're not staffed up totally yet, but they do have some numbers. And their public relations person used some about 6 months ago. I haven't heard, since they've been continuing to add staff or employees. But I would be interested in Fort Riley, for instance. How many of Fort Riley personnel and families live in Manhattan that are associated? And you might have to break it down by civilians, or I don't know, military. I'm not sure how you do it. Whatever numbers they can provide. Okay. I think that information is really telling for us, and it's hard to get. People just guess or throw around a number, and so we don't know what some of the other resources, like at the state does. Commerce Department develops statistics, and so wherever I don't know where. I don't have a source to send you to, but okay. that is so. It has to do with our what do they call it? Our appeal to people from out away, and that. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll look into that.
Sarah, this is Commissioner Reddy. I think one of the things that this gives a lot of demographic information, but as I pointed earlier in our conversation, I think the health also is important. And like you said, I'm not sure how you gather that information. Maybe it's with our local physicians and doctor, our hospital, or our school social workers, or whatever it might be. But the what is our physical health component here? Do we have a high rate of obesity or mental health or cardiology issues? What is it, some of the mental health or the physical health needs in our community, and where are we at, or what are the trends in that?
Yep.
Because one of the hardest things we have is recruiting medical physicians and nurses and doctors, but I don't know where we are on our physical health climate to make sure we're meeting their needs. Oftentimes, people are being transferred to other hospitals or other physician in other communities, such as Topeka. So I just not sure where you would get that information, but that's something I think would be an indicator for our physical well-being.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That is something we'd like to include, and we're working to see what we can find that's a little bit maybe finer grained than the countywide data, but I think on the same lines as getting some of those obesity rates and some of that stuff, understanding accessibility, like how accessible healthcare is and what different types of healthcare do you have available per capita. There's some benchmarking on that we can provide. Also, really quick, because I forgot to mention this at the end of the presentation, but one of the things that we would like to do is to do some benchmarking and pull in some comparisons. We did to the sort of county and state level, and we'll pull in the Potts County stuff as well. But other peer communities, university communities, and other communities that you sort of see yourself. So we've gathered some of those when we were talking to different folks and in staff. So we've got some lists that we'd like to pull some of that in as well. So we'd like to next iteration fold some of that benchmarking in. So if you've got places that you know of that you think that you'd like to see how Manhattan compares, let us know. We'll be pulling that in.
One resource I'd like to make sure that you see, if you have not already, is that several groups here in the community 5 years ago and last year did a community needs assessment that included the western part of Potawatomi County, but I think it was all of Riley County. There's a wellness coalition. This last time city was a partner, and so a group of people, and they tried to got like 2,000 responses from people in the community. There were a few deficits in certain age categories, but for the most part, it's really the best information I've seen about what people think about things here, how they evaluate our community. And Debbie Nuss was kind of the leader both of those times. And I would hope that as you conduct interviews, I don't know if you've gotten a list yet together. Is that when you say community group, is that what you're talking about? Is people here in the community that you plan to interview or bring forward? We've not submitted any names at all of people we think would be important for you to connect with.
Yeah, that's the stakeholder group that I mentioned that Jared's been helping to start that list, but we've just begun to work on that. So if you've got ideas, I think pass them to Jared, but that would be the sort of targeted input. And then that community committee, of course, is the sort of broader committee made up of residents that are going to be kind of a sounding board throughout the process. But yeah, that stakeholder group is, I think, maybe one that might be one to get.
I'd like to be sure Debbie Nuss is on it.
Okay.
Was that for Riley County or just for the city of Manhattan?
Both.
Both?
It was all of Riley County and the western part of Potawatomi County, as I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the Riley County Needs Assessment from the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition, and we have forwarded that on to Jamie and Sarah.
Okay, well then they already have it. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other research question, and I think you had your slide earlier where topics that were highlighted that we're discussing and you haven't got to yet. One of the ones clearly was taxes, but in that discussion, our research is kind of tax burden per capita, I think, is an important thing that we don't completely have a full grasp of, at least going forward. And when you talk about benchmarking, so that what kind of tax burden per capita are our taxpayers paying here compared to what maybe somebody in a peer city or another city in Kansas. So there's that for you. I it's not it's not always as clear as it can be with that, but I would appreciate that number to be included, because we want this to be the end product to be reflective of meshing into the budget somehow, and how that ties. And it starts with a discussion of understanding where we are currently with that tax burden to our peers.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron. Yep. Okay, well, if other things come to you, again, like I said, this is an evolving, document. So if other things come to you, feel free to, reach out or send ideas or comments through Jared, and we will continue to flush this out and bring in some more data. At this point, I want to ask Cyril to briefly give you an overview of the strategic plan employee kickoff survey that we administered. We closed it on I think it was Monday evening, Tuesday morning of this week, so it's fresh. We had it open for a couple weeks, so she's going to run through some of the themes that we heard.
So as Sarah mentioned, we administered this survey, and the purpose of doing this was to gain some insight on the employees' perspective on both the city as a community and an organization. So this week we were able to collect 116 responses from not only different age groups within your employees, but also a cross-section of people from different departments and roles, including supervisors, administration, and managers. So the first question really just focuses on the city as a community, and we asked the employees to list some of the strengths in Manhattan. And about 30% of the responses mentioned that, the small town feel and the community, the sense of community was a strength. Following that was Kansas State and the variety of amenities and activities available within the city. And of course, the city location in Fort Riley. Other things worth mentioning here are diversity, people, the city being well maintained, safe, and family oriented. Next slide. Question 2 asks about the challenges that are being faced within the community today. And about 20% expressed challenges with the economy related to impacts from the pandemic, the ability to support and attract small businesses and new jobs and sectors within the city. Growth and housing were also frequently mentioned topics. So things like growth management and infrastructure, the rising housing costs, and personal prosperity, such as the cost of living, were some of the things that were identified as challenges within the community. There's also mention about the taxes, the declining enrollment at Kansas State, enforcing health regulations during the pandemic, and flooding. So question 3 asked the employees what they wanted the city to focus on in the next 5 years. One topic that frequently came up was the city as an internal organization. So about 20% of the employees mentioned that they would like the city to revisit the salaries and improve them. They wanted better leaderships between their department heads or people in the higher roles, and supporting staff and managing budget. Infrastructure and taxes were also important themes, including maintaining and repairing the structures and reducing taxes, and then diversifying the economy, expanding it, were also mentioned as well. Question 4, what they would like the city question 4 asked the employees about what the city government is currently doing well. And many of the employees appreciated the fact that the city was able to manage through during the pandemic, and keeping employees, employed through during COVID. They also talked about how well the city was managing with the budget, setting the priorities, and also serving and listening to the communities. They also talked about how well the city has been supporting the employees, especially during, as I mentioned, COVID. Question 5. So this question asks this employees what the city could be doing better. And a lot of the responses that we've collected fell into these three themes. The first one being employees. So again, they would like salaries to be improved, more staff to be hired, and support from upper level roles. They felt that the city could do better at communicating between the leaders, staff, and departments, and also managing the budget and taxes. So these next few questions focuses on the mission and goals. So we asked the employees if they were clear, if the mission and goals of the city organization was clear to them, and 39% said they were clear, but almost 50% were not clear, and that was because most of the employees were unaware the city even had a mission, or that they knew of their own department's mission, but not sort of the overall city goals. Some people were somewhat clear that they knew the city mission, but not the goals. Question 7 asks whether the role and mission of their department was clear to them. And for the most part, at 80%, yes, it was clear, but some did point out that because things are evolving, it needed to be updated. Only a few people said that it was not clear. And again, those who said that it was somewhat clear, they were clear on their role as an employee, but not clear on the department's mission. So finally, the last question we asked was whether there were any barriers to doing the job or fulfilling the department's mission. And many people at 77% said yes, and 23% said no. The barriers that were identified include things like staff shortage, funding and budget limitations, lack of support and inefficient leadership, difficulties climbing the position ladder, salaries, and lack of physical resources and equipment to help conduct their jobs.
The last one. Okay. So that was, again, just a 8-question survey to try to get in this moment understanding of, you know, the city as a community, the city's organization, and like we zeroed in on sort of those mission and goals. So again, I'll pause there if there's anything, you know, any comments or questions. Again, we're going to be engaging with the staff through the staff technical committee and through some of these interviews, and of course all the staff can participate in the general, you know, public input as well. But that's what we learned in this initial kickoff.
So Sarah, this is Commissioner Reddy and Cyril. I guess in the barriers identified, I just need a little bit more clarification. I understand all of it except for the lack of support and inefficient leadership from those in higher positions. I don't know what leadership they're talking about. I think in most of those matters, I can see where City Commission plays a role in all of that, because most of it do fall into the budget parameters. But I just need a little bit more clarification in lack of support and efficient leadership from higher positions and difficulties climbing the position ladder.
So I think what people were expressing in terms of the leadership is that I think it sounds like there's a little bit of a disconnect between direction from, you know, people from the head of departments or people from the upper level roles. I think there's just some clarity and communication that would benefit from employees and staff, if that makes sense. And then the difficulties climbing the position ladder. I think it seemed to me that people were unclear, and some people have expressed this in the responses, which we could share it with you, is that they weren't really sure how to, you know, sort of move up from their position if they wanted to pursue, let's say, a managerial position. It was unclear on what they had to do on their end to get to that space.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think that's one of the things the strategic plan is so important. I think it identifies more clear definition and more clarity, I guess, in some of those areas, both internal as well as external, so what we can all do to make those a little bit better. So thank you for this.
I just wanted to add also the mentorship. I think that is something that people would appreciate, just to better navigate through their jobs, their workload, and all the day-to-day business activities.
And one of the things I would like to see is maybe in other cities, if they do climate surveys, like annual climate surveys or every 2 to 5 year climate surveys, kind of to see progress and how they monitor themselves internally within their departments and as a larger structure for city leadership. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can, like I said, we just pulled this down, so we only had a few days to sort of look at this initial, look at it and kind of create some themes, but we can provide the full database of input, so you guys can, kind of scan it, and there may be some subtleties that you pick up on because the inner workings, but about the sort of positions, we did ask folks to identify what position they were in, but if they were talking about higher up positions, I'm not sure if they might have indicated what they meant about that level, but they might not have. But that may be some stuff that you pick up on in there when we give you the raw data that can help with that as well.
Right. And I understand the other pieces because they do fall into some of the budget constraints as we were discussing about our own from department heads. We heard that consistent message, so I get that piece of it.
Okay, thank you.
You should, to your point about kind of gauging our employees, we did start in 2017 doing every 2 years an employee satisfaction survey, touching on a lot of these areas, and that's really where OEI was born. Some of these bullet points that you're talking about, we have heard that from employees, looking at things like training is a big thing. So getting our supervisors and leaders equipped with dealing with people, working with individuals, it's a big part of our organization. And I think some employees, some departments were stretched pretty thin, and we have managers and leaders doing the technical work and also trying to balance the supervisor role, which is difficult at times. And that's kind of what we've been hearing. So we're trying to figure out how we can best address that to really equip our leaders right when they get with the organization to get them on that leadership path, get them equipped with those skills of working with people. And then similarly, like Cyril was talking about with that mentoring, how can we get that same training and that same focus on our employees who are doing the technical work in the fields and in our administrative offices.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. I'm glad to hear about that from 2017. I think that's something, as you keep track of the trends in our city organization, to also bring it for commissioners. I know it works well internally, but I think, I understand very well about the salary component, the equipment and resources, and that does fall in our city commission purview for budget, and sometimes that could be the burden that city management has to carry when making those tough decisions. So I understand the complete picture of it, so it makes it a little bit better when we move forward also.
The other thing I might point out is we've been in a period of no budget increases for several years, or very minimal. And so it might be, you need to understand that K-State has been flat for 15 years and their budget just gets whacked every year. Even last year, our county and city held our budget totally flat, both budgets. So it's generally the state of the Kansas economy and COVID and kind of a, it's just where we happen to be at this place in time. And so just to say that we're not just alone here, and I would imagine that if you can't give decent raises, then the employees are going to be disappointed. And I look at some other employees at other organizations also, and would like, but yet we want to do the best we can for our city employees too. So we're pulled in different directions.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Butler. I don't really agree with that assessment, because while the mill levy was flat last year, and that's the first time that's happened in 10 years, the actual dollar amount went up. And so the idea that we've been keeping a flat budget, I don't think that's correct. If you go back and look at the city budget books, you will see that the dollar amount that the city spends each year has gone up consistently. And there's only been 2 times in the past 10 years where the mill levy was kept flat. Not the actual dollar amount, but the mill levy. And once was last year, and I think the time before that was somewhere around 2013. And so it is not correct to say that we've been flat. We've been increasing our property taxes year in, year out. And that's what people are irritated about.
Can, Cyril, I think I have a question here on that deals with question 3. And I guess this topic is what surprises you, and so if you look at question 3, and this goes to Commissioner Morris and Mayor Butler's conversation, our employees also again or the city employees are saying they are interested in seeing taxes either stabilize or decrease. But then if you go and that's it over the next 5 years, right? Focus over the next 5 years, that's on there. But when you go to question 5, what could the city government do better? Well, the employees say improve salaries, hiring, retaining staff, and then to Commissioner Reddy's point, you know, the retention and on question 8 is fulfilling the, or not question 8, sorry, the barriers identified in inadequate staffing and complete workload. So I'm not so surprised that those dots don't connect quite the same way, and I think you're hearing some of that discussion amongst commissioners of around the budget. But what I would like to know and see come through this strategic plan is in those conversations with stakeholders and with maybe focus groups with the employees, what are their ideas beyond if it's a stabilization of taxes, but they're wanting to improve these other types of things that cost money, where and how do we get to that point? Maybe there are creative ideas to do both. I think that's a good part of this process amongst the community members to get us to help us understand how we connect those dots, or if there's other things not on the table that we're not doing, what are those priorities? Because it all comes down to the product being what are the priorities the community have, and one leads to the other in some people's minds.
I just wanted to add to that. Someone did point out that it would be beneficial if there's an education component for the community so that they understand where the taxes are coming from. And I think that might build the base of, you know, how to facilitate this discussion efficiently and get to the answers that everyone is looking for in terms of taxes and also services and providing, you know, things that would benefit the community.
This is Commissioner Butler again. The general sense I get from the people in the community when they talk about taxes is they just want us to stay within our budget. In other words, if the city collects through various taxes, and I'm talking all sources, a certain amount of money, and not all of it is property tax, it comes from different things. We collect a pile of money each year, and our budget should be designed to not exceed that pile of money. And we have not done that the past 10 years. And that is the problem, because their perception is that the city decides what they want to do, and then they bill the citizens for it. And they want us to approach it differently, which is, this is what we can expect for income. Now design a budget that makes that work. And if the priority is salaries, then fine, that comes off the top. That doesn't leave a lot for everything else. So it's really a change in philosophy on how you manage the budget. It shouldn't be a case of build the budget and then put together a mill levy. It should be start with a flat mill levy and go from there. And that just hasn't been the general philosophy. I get lots of emails and people, talking about that. But every time we have a budget discussion, it seems to boil down to, well, 1 or 2 mills is not that excessive. Let's go ahead and increase it. And that's been the habit the past few years.
Yeah, I do think the education piece is important. I know that part of this scan, I mean, we're going to be using a portion of this deck with the community committee next week. Again, working towards providing a full version. But I think this scan document can go a long way in helping folks, educate about what is. And then when we ask the questions, we've even done some engagement with folks where we got like play money and they get to put money where they, on these different priorities, like here's where I want my money to go. And we can understand that from the general public. So I know it's like, it helps it become more real when they've got, monopoly money in their hand and they're really thinking about where their tax money is going. So I think when we get further along the lines here in the process, I think having some discussions with the community committee and the public in general about that is going to be really important.
I think Linda Morse, I think that's a pretty difficult thing to do. I think our city has done it year after year. Our finance director, we've talked about it in budgets, it's in the newspaper, there's this dollar bill and it's cut into segments about what percent goes to what. But I actually think when people get their property tax bill, they just look at the total amount, they see it's gone up, and the city is the closest thing to beat on. And even though we're one of the smallest components of it, so it is a collection, it's a sum of its parts is what the tax bill is. And of course the pressure is growing. There's legislation in Topeka to anytime a budget goes up, to take it to a vote of the people. So it's going to get harder and harder. It's just difficult is all. Complex.
Yeah, no, it is. I think you're right. And maybe finding a way to reframe it a little bit might help. I know that sometimes when we've worked with communities where people come at it from a cost perspective only, but there's also a value, right? Like there's a value to what you're getting. So if you need to make sure people appreciate the value as well, because you should get a return on that investment. And so I think helping to sort of frame that might help people as well. But yeah.
One more, I'll just weigh in for a second here, how to solve. I think part of the deal is we've already gotten emails since Tuesday night about people complaining about the pools not being available, and they're saying things like, we voted to raise taxes, which was the special sales tax, which was for jobs, infrastructure, and workforce housing. 0 of that was designated to go to the pools. And so the problem is we seem to have lots of money for some things, all the North Campus corridor, all the construction in various places, things like that, for the levy, for the new maintenance build facility, things like that. But we don't have any money for other programs. And I think that's one of the things that drives people mad, is that you can see the city pissing away money on all kinds of projects, except for the one that they want to see where they want the money to go. And so trying to make that explanation, that leap of faith, that value-based decision of, yes, okay, your property taxes have gone up every year because most of it goes to the police department. Most people, that's important, and they're okay with that if they would understand that. But they don't put the 2 and 2 together, that the taxes went up, the city didn't get any more money, the police department, the library, fire department got most of it, which they shouldn't complain about, but they just need to understand that that's what the problem is. And then if we can just do it, we're gonna have to do a better job of explaining, different pots of money, and this pot of money is designated for here, and the pot of money that goes to their pet project, that money's been going down because that's coming from sales taxes or something. And so, yeah, it's we can all do a lot better job of explaining, trying to show the value, and then explaining some more. But I think there's a lot of disconnect because most people just don't pay enough attention, and they assume a lot of stuff that just isn't so.
I think it's important. It's important also to note that we never see people who come forward lobbying for sewer lines and water lines, and they don't complain about the storm water infrastructure until their property gets flooded. But if it's on the other side of town or down the street, it's not such a big deal. It's just things can't be balanced in the public's perspective, I think. So anyway, just to say that.
Okay, well, this was, I think, helpful conversation for us, and like I said, we'll be continuing to package up what we heard here and some of this other data points. Jamie, real quick, we're going to take a break here in a second, but Jamie, there was a few things we just wanted to sort of end on here with this best practices report for university communities, and so I think you just maybe wanted to mention a few things here. Oh, you're on mute, Jamie.
Sorry about that. This is mainly just as a reference for all of you to know that as we go forward, if there are certain things that you're thinking about that we can help, we have done some writing and research around different aspects, and this is an outline from some work we did for College Station and Texas A&M that looked at what are the opportunities for cost sharing, what are some the kind of the best practices for just general coordination amongst the two entities, how to do maybe a more intentional job of connecting students to the community while they're there. We've got some really good examples of student engagement that's been impactful and demonstrated that stick around more. I think this issue about identity and image and branding and how that fits into both agendas at both communities, both entities. And then there's a lot of places we're working right now, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and a College Station again, where there's just been this really significant amount of construction of intense residential development encroaching on older established neighborhoods. So trying to navigate that. And then housing affordability, because what we've seen in many places is students can come in, and if you pack an apartment or you pack a house, they can together pay a lot more than average wage earners can, and it just really distorts the affordability question. Again, we don't know yet how many of these apply to your situation, but we just wanted to know. This last one is related in part to the two above, and that is how do you manage the redevelopment or infill development that is happening aggressively in a lot of these places. So again, it's not for discussion, but I just want you to know that we have some depth on some of the research if it becomes relevant as we move forward the strategic planning process with you.
Jamie, this is Aaron. On all of those points, if somehow you added to your research with the military aspect, the Fort Riley connection,
right,
that would be perfect.
right. So no, that you're absolutely right. I think, and Aaron, you may have been one who pointed that out to us in the interviews, is that there's a really unusual dynamic in that you've got both of those entities going on. in another life, I was the assistant post master planner for an Army base, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, but that has been a long time ago. But thanks, Aaron. I know it's significant.
I think it's hard for Fort Riley or the military to ever bring any resources to a relationship.
Yeah.
And so, but there are more soft or intangible kinds of relationships, and we do have a couple of items that the staff can brief you on where we have worked together, but they're just hard to come by.
Right. Yeah. Well, we really appreciated the report that Aaron sent us, the economic impact report. We're working right now in 2 places that have major Air Force bases, and what you just said, Commissioner Morse, sounds familiar. One thing we have found is that there's a significant push in the Air Force to really move things outside the fence, like some research and office space, and that's got a number of drivers behind it. But one of them is they've found that some of the talent, like I met just in December with like the lead talent officer for the Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 14,000 employees in a single site. They are really struggling to get like their civilians or even their military folks to want to come to Dayton, Ohio, where this is, because of other quality of life issues. So people aren't expecting to be there. So some of this outside the fence, as they call it, like office spaces, to put some of their talented people in a more urban, walkable kind of environment versus the post, or like a more conventional suburban office park.
We have lovely Flint Hills, but if you're in the military and you are advised that you'll be coming to Kansas,
yeah,
we have an image to overcome sometimes, reputation-wise, and just rural and not away from the urban that a lot of military bases are associated with. So you're right. There's that aspect of things too.
Yeah. But to me, that's just, I know some of you feel strongly about this already, but to me, that's just one more reason for you to work on your quality of life, quality of place, items, because it does have an impact.
I feel like we really have been all along. I don't think we need a great big push. I think we have lovely swimming pools, and we're having trouble affording to staff them because the one downtown takes 20 lifeguards.
Wow.
I'm just saying, we build it and then it's hard to afford to sustain, to provide the services, I guess, within the infrastructure that anyway, that's just always a struggle.
Okay.
It's not just the pools, it's the parks and mowing and, doing all of those things. So just part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Reddy. You have university in the top 3 bullets there. So one of the things we have is international town gown relationship with our university, and there's a committee. Commissioner Morris and I are on that. So I'm sure we would like to provide feedback. But the other thing I want to show is, and I'll send this document, Kansas State University, at least I believe 2 or 3 times, has received recognition called from the Carnegie Foundation of Community Engagement Reclassification. So I have the executive summary here, and it has a report on the community engagement from from several departments and the community, and what they did as far as whether it's with in the arts and sciences, clinical instruction services, whatever it is. So I'll send that to you to see if that's helpful. That's an economic drive, I think, that we can use when we look at the variety of disciplines that are engaged with our community, as opposed to being in a silo of university separate from the community. This is that university and city engagement with each other. So, And that's a facet that's not often talked about, because we do so many things that some of
Yeah.
those things don't get enough publicity. But I think that's one thing that we have, one of the best town gown relationships.
Yeah.
And this community has been recognized for that. So I will send that to you for some of those efforts, so you can reach out to some of those sectors as well.
Great. No, I really appreciate that. And it's good to hear you have that kind of relationship. We've actually shown up in places where there were countervailing lawsuits between the institution and the city, you know, multiple millions of dollars against each other, and trying to do a plan in that context is not very easy.
Not like that.
Yeah,
That's
that's good to hear. All right.
Okay, well, we're gonna, we've been at this about, I think, 2 hours now, so I think we'll take a break, about a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene, and we're gonna switch gears and, get into, a little bit more, discussion and hearing from you all, as we start to sort of put together these pieces and parts of the plan. So let's, it's about 3:01 your time, so we'll come back in about 10 minutes.
Sarah, you want to stop your share, and I'll just put up a PowerPoint slide that said we'll be back at 3:11 for
Yeah.
our viewers. Thanks.
Sarah. Sarah,
Yes.
I said hello.
Oh, hello.
I raided the Jennies in the fridge. I don't know whose it is, but it's been there too long.
I think that's a good idea. You don't want to get freezer burn and go bad. I just ordered, they have a new flavor called Everything Bagel.
What?
I have to tell you, if you like everything bagels, it's pretty good.
Huh.
It tastes like you're
Like
eating.
a bagel?
Yeah, like a bagel. It's sweet and salty. It's got that sweet and salty going
Yeah.
for it. But
So it seems like we're okay on time, right?
yeah, we're about. We yes, I think we're doing okay. We've got still another, 2 hours if we need it.
And just so you guys are aware, you are still broadcasting live to the public.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know what Jenny's is.
Yeah, I was like, we just did a national plug then for our local ice cream shop.
They have everything bagel flavored ice cream. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I know. They have some really unique flavors. She's known for her flavor combinations. But that was the first one. But when I saw it, because I like everything bagels, I was like, oh, I may have to try that. But it was strange, but it was really good. I think you have to like everything bagels though to appreciate it.
Anyway, but she started right here in our neighborhood, and she's got shops in LA and DC and Charleston, and really quite the phenomenon.
She
Very
ships.
cool.
You can JENI Jenny's ice cream is. You can Google her, and she does ship nationwide, I think. So.
I have a friend in Ohio. I might make that recommendation to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where in Ohio is your friend?
Columbus.
Oh.
Yeah. She just moved there this summer with her husband.
Oh.
He's working at Ohio State.
Okay.
Well, we could walk to Ohio State in just about 10 or 15 minutes, but. Well, I'm glad they're here. This is the best place in Ohio.
Very good. They're very happy so far.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing place. In the last 10 years have been, 15 probably. And Commissioner Reddy, she knows the place.
Yeah, graduated there, grew up there, so very wonderful place. I like it.
Yeah.
Like Manhattan now, though. So.
Do we know if we have everyone? I don't know if we have the mayor.
Yeah, I was looking for.
I'm
There
here.
he is. There he is.
Okay.
I just didn't want to have, things that get noises in the house distract the meeting.
Okay.
You're
So
more considerate than I am.
go back here and I'll start our. All right. Can everyone see the screen again? And Jamie, if you want me to, go back to unshare so we can
Yeah.
bigger screen, bigger boxes for us when we talk, and let me know. I know some of this information may be helpful for them to see.
Yeah.
And once we get into the discussion, I can always.
Right.
this-
So in this section, we want to, as the title says, begin to frame like the future orientation here. And we're not trying to perfect anything, today, but we're trying to get some sentiments from you that will help us understand how what you're thinking and help us shape the rest of the process. And, we believe that your strategic plan will have the elements that we talked about earlier in terms of vision, mission, and goals. So we got a couple things here we'd like to do that would help put us on our way. But again, as I said, not trying to land something that we all agree on here today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the vision. So you can go to the next slide, Sarah. We talked earlier, but the vision in our mind is, the highest level and therefore general expression of the community's future. And it ought to be something that, reflects the values and really is the touchstone for more specific work. Like imagine, getting down the process and we're talking about specific actions. I think you have to look up every now and then and see how is this particular project, policy, or program helping us realize the vision or not. So don't change it yet, Sarah, but if you can hold it there for a minute. I'm going to ask you in a minute to think about, what your vision might be for Manhattan. And, it doesn't have to be like a coherent statement, but it ought to have the sentiments, that were useful to share. But I want you to think about, putting some thoughts together that would, be in consideration for your vision. So now, Sarah, you can go to the next slide. So I want you to think about the community in the future. It could be 10, 15, 20 years. I want you to think, what will it be like to live there, live in Manhattan, go to school in Manhattan, raise a family in Manhattan. What will it be like when you want to recreate, when you want to be entertained? What will it be like for, children, grandchildren, or, if you're if you're a more mature member of the community at this point in the future. But think about what that would look like. Close your eyes for, a couple minutes if that helps you to think about your vision for the future of Manhattan. And again, you don't have to worry about like a coherent sentence, but you can actually get some sentiments together about what is it. And it's okay if it's short, it's okay if it's longer. But I want you to take about, 3 or 4 minutes here and just get your thoughts together in thinking about this question. This is where we need Jeopardy music. Who's my hero? Sarah, could you take down the slide? Great. Okay, so we've had a few minutes here. Does anybody want to volunteer, or should I just call on you? Okay, Commissioner Morse. You're doing my trick with keeping yourself muted.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jamie. You're being gentle. I'm sorry, but I kind of tried to pack everything into one sentence.
Well, I just want to remind you, Commissioner, we talked about prioritizing, so it starts here.
I know. I said, an attractive community with a thriving university and military posts with prosperous businesses where people want to live and amenities that will bring visitors.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so
I have, my next thing is to add happy.
Happy?
Happy, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, happy is good. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I would like to do is like get them all out, and then we'll discuss if that's okay.
Okay.
So, okay, how about you, Commissioner Estabrook?
I kind of have Manhattan is a welcoming, innovative community for all ages with a that in the long term, we're thinking ahead as a hub for the Midwest in workforce development and community outreach, I guess, or innovation.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. How about you, Commissioner Hattasol?
Well, I had items instead of a mission statement, but Aggieville would be a pedestrian zone with restaurants and fun things to do down there and shops and stuff. The north of Kimball, across from the stadium, all that area would look kind of like corporate woods in Kansas City with several high-rise apartments and not apartments, several high-rise office things and green spaces around it full of activity and well-paying jobs. And then the airport would have 3 airlines flying in and out to the major hubs, providing great air service. And then the older neighborhoods would be refurbished and would be the hip place to live.
All right, good. So a lot of yours are about the physical environment, yeah, which is good to hear. Okay, how about you, Mayor?
Yeah, my focus is more on, sustaining Manhattan as a small town community. I'm not really interested in seeing the city, expand to 100,000 and become some megalopolis, because that's not why I retired here. And so at a certain point, we could become excessive on growth. So there's got to be some constraints there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want us to go back to where we were in 1970, where you had to drive to Topeka to go shopping. That's not it either. I mean, we've brought in some, but that's sort of where my focus is on the vision. It's not making this some megalopolis city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
what you led with though was like sustaining the small town.
Yep.
Okay, that's the vision. We actually, some of you may know Cary, North Carolina. It's in the Research Triangle Park.
Yep, been there. Got relatives there. Yep.
Yeah. They small town character and feel was really, really important to them as they grew from 14,000 in 1970 to 140,000 just a few years ago. So they were having a hard time, maintaining that from a physical standpoint. So they legally changed the name to the town of Cary, North Carolina. That's their official name, the town. I'm not recommending that strategy, but I think they're trying to get, create a feel by putting it in the name. All right. So Commissioner, ready?
The other thing I wanted to add, when we talk about growth, we're sort of constrained. We got the river there. You can't get water, out towards I-70 because of the pumping requirements. And then you've got, Pot County on the other side. It's really difficult to grow the city a whole lot bigger. Now you can grow it up, right. Commissioner Hattasol mentioned, by higher density in certain things, but as far as going to 140,000, I really don't see that in our future.
Yeah. All right, good. Commissioner Reddy?
Yes, thank you. This is kind of incoherent, but a community that is vibrant and innovative and safe and has a good quality of life that is respectful, inclusive, and welcoming to all individuals and families.
That's great. Great. So we have all 5 of your sentiments out there. I would ask you first if you have any reactions about what your peers have just put out there about, you know, questions for them or clarifications. Okay.
I would just, Linda Morris, I would say that I agree with Yusha's interest in a diverse and welcoming community. We have a population that's different than surrounding Kansas communities, and for the sake of our university and our military, our community needs to be attentive to that diversity. And so I do agree with that, and I haven't thought enough to stick that into mine too.
Yeah, no, that's important. That's exactly the kind of observation that I think is helpful here. If we can piggyback off of each other in this comment, but this notion about inclusiveness, I heard from a couple of you. So would it be helpful if Sarah could just you know, slowly read off like the 5 sentiments that we, hopefully you got them. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I might not have them word for word because I was writing fast, but I think I got the gist of them, and feel free to jump in. But first we heard about attractive community with a thriving military and university components, with attractive amenities, a welcoming, innovative, for all ages hub for the Midwest, for workforce, and this idea of community outreach, I think again with innovation. And then we heard Aggieville, pedestrian zone, you know, fun place to be, North Kimball, with maybe more high-rise, good-paying jobs, green space, the airport with 3 airlines, and the older neighborhoods, you know, continue to be the hip place to be. And then 4th, we heard sustaining Manhattan as a small town community. And then vibrant, innovative, safe, with high quality of life, of a diverse, welcoming, inclusive community.
I would just add that I also included with prosperous businesses. So university and military component or post is what I said, with prosperous businesses.
Great.
Where people want to live in. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That was an important piece.
Yep. Yes.
Well, and I'm not interested in Manhattan getting much over 75,000 people either. I think that would be, but based on our constraints of land, military, water, and such like that, I don't think we can get much bigger than that without it being a big traffic jam.
Okay, that's good. So I was intrigued by the comment that, you know, Manhattan is different than other communities, you know, around by virtue of the student population and the military population, that it is different. And so is there a way, I mean, like in this vision statement, where you can think about something that talks about the unique, distinct nature of Manhattan? I'll give you an example here. We, probably 10 years ago, we wrote the vision for the future of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, there's a lot of small municipalities and townships all around it. And a lot of, you know, those are all more suburban and growing. And, you know, they are urban and are going to be urban. And so they really wanted to embrace that. And so the vision statement includes language that talks about, you know, being unapologetically urban. That's what distinguishes them from the suburban, you know, communities. And so they took what was unique about them and, you know, found a way to, you know, just like that, this is who we are. We're not going to apologize for it, but we're going to be the best urban place we can be. So I don't know if there's anything that you can help us capture, like, that's unique or authentic about Manhattan, but I'm intrigued by this, your observation about it. It is different.
This is Commissioner Reddy. I think one of the things, I don't see us getting up to 100,000. I'm not worried about the population increase because right now we're decreasing in population. My vision for Manhattan is to make it vibrant enough so when businesses want to locate, they will see workforce. They can see their workforce needs being met. They can see restaurants and arts and quality of life for their families. Otherwise, they're not going to come here. They're going to go to other places.
Right.
If you don't have those types of businesses coming in, you can't increase your salaries. You can't increase the quality of life. We need to work to bring more students in. So we're not at the point of saying we don't want to grow. We're at the point of saying we need to continue to grow to stay competitive.
Right.
In order for that to happen, we need to think about innovative ways, futuristic ways about electric cars, and have a vision for what does the future look like for the city of Manhattan. And we can still have that family-friendly community, because one of the best indicators why people come to Manhattan, Kansas is our public schools. The quality of our public schools in Manhattan is a huge selling point for a lot of folks that come here. As much as they look at housing and everything else, I think we need to accentuate that piece of it, that we care about our children and we care about our families.
Right. You used the word that is the first time I've heard in this conversation used about being competitive. Is that part of the vision, that this is a competitive, community of choice for investments, or when people want to, live in a place like this? I mean, is that part of who you think you are? I don't want to force it if you say, no, you.
To me, that is part of the equation.
Yeah.
Part of the equation for this strategic plan is for us to be competitive.
Right.
So.
Great. All right. The other thing that resonates with me about this last part of this conversation is that, there's a lot of communities, I probably don't need to tell you this, but a lot of communities in the Midwest, losing population. And the only ones that are hanging in there, growing or being stable, are those that are attractive to recent immigrant populations. And, I know that that's a difficult topic in some communities, but that is the difference. Fort Wayne, Indiana, if not for a certain sort of immigration, being attractive, it's important. And we've talked about Columbus. In Columbus, it's the 15th largest city in the country, but a large part of the population is from people that weren't born here. We, in fact, have 100,000 people in this region who were not born in this country and weren't here 10 years ago. So the robust nature of our population growth, I mean, with a younger, we have 140,000 college students too, and so a younger population and high fertility rates, but the in-migration piece is really huge, for us in this community. And part of the brand essence of Columbus is being an open place. So that has helped from an economic development standpoint substantially, but I just wanted to share that. So are there other reactions to the vision? There's some really good sentiments here about, what you might see.
Well, I was just thinking, you talked kind of about what makes Manhattan kind of unique, in that sense of why a unique population, and it goes certainly to our strengths, which are that we already have the education component, the military component, but workforce development, professional learning, and then what we haven't really talked about, but is clearly part of previous this community's vision, has been the ability to provide worldwide safety and security around health, and that's NBAF connections. That's of course Fort Riley, but that's the the animal science, the animal health corridor part of the attractiveness that makes us, I mean, it's embedded in how we got to where we are and having this level of a facility opening in the coming years.
Yeah, that's good. Any other thoughts here about these words?
Yeah, one of the things that, the chamber's been talking about for years, and I was speaking with them a couple of weeks ago. We always seem to focus on, okay, we've got the university and we've got the Army, and really Manhattan's not going to influence the university and the Army a whole lot. The Army's going to do what the Army's going to do, and so is the university. The third piece of that is the other businesses, and we don't really have a lot of those. And that's what, the chamber's always said is the third leg of our economy, and that seems to be the shortest one. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons it's short is because we really don't have any commercial space where a business could come in that needs 10 or 15 or 20 acres. And that's something the chamber is looking at. And so for a vision, if you want to increase the amenities and have people with higher salaries come to the town, then what you have to do is do something with that third leg of the stool,
right?
Which is get private business in here. We've had some successes like Florence that wasn't on your list of local employees, but I think they've got close to 300 out there at the airport facility. And that really needs to be embedded in the vision. And that can be done without, creating a city of 100,000 people. It's got to be like NBAF, the facility comes in, all the jobs are, pretty high paying, so it doesn't bring a burden to the social structure.
Yeah.
And that's the other problem. If you want to maintain a, quality of life city, a good police department, et cetera, then you've got to have the business that's going to attract people for the jobs, and the jobs got to pay enough so that we don't have to worry about social services. And I think that's got to be sort of embedded in that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I'll jump in there because that's also what I was thinking, in the sense of Manhattan offers businesses. So a vision 10 years, down the road, I would hope that we would be able to say Manhattan offers businesses an opportunity to relocate to an area where they can get, that small town feel, but have the amenities and the technology capacity of those metropolitan areas. So I know that the mayor and others in the chamber, everybody's been talking to businesses around the country in different ways that are interested in locating to different areas because of just problems within metropolitan areas. And employees in technology open doors for people to work remotely or work other places, and we have an opportunity to position ourselves as we have these amenities. Come here, but we're not quite to that level. So I think that's part of the vision.
Great. Sarah, I hope you got what Aaron said there at the beginning about the opportunities to relocate here. Did you get that? Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you, but I think you're saying yes.
Yes, I got it. Yeah, small town feel with sort of those bigger city amenities and opportunities.
Right. So I think this has been really helpful to us, thinking at the higher level about what's important to you, and then we'll work on this as we go through the process. But this has been good. So one of the other items is the mission, and Sarah, maybe you could put that. So, we have a definition for this, as we shared earlier, about, helps explain in simple terms the purpose for being. So instead of generating something here, we're actually going to look at like the current statement and see if you have any reactions to it, or for the time being, until we get further into the process, you might say, this is okay, this would work, but or not. So just take a minute to read that.
think the current mission statement is very functional and kind of utilitarian, without anything fancy. To me, that's the traditional role of a city at a very basic level, without the vision or the dream kind of component.
I would like it to say something about high quality of life, since that's what makes Manhattan a nice place to live. Is it's a nice place to live. There's parks and there's fun things to do and there's things for the kids and so a lot of that falls under the city, and that's at some point I'd like to address that. That doesn't have to be today.
Okay, but that, so that comes in like this is we're really talking about the city government is supposed to do X, and what you were talking about is really help. Part of the key part of their role is this quality of life, high quality of life, sustaining that.
Yes, see, I always saw that as this mission statement's been there in the budget books for the past 10 years. It's one of the first pages, and the quality of life to me was always part of that enhanced economic vitality. It's sort of embedded in there, and that's the way I viewed it. Because I agree with Mark, it's part of it, but I saw it as being capsulized right there in that those three words: enhance economic vitality. And you can't do that unless you've got good quality of life.
Yeah, I think, that's a reasonable interpretation.
My reading of it is that our mission is, and it may be just the nature of government, and I think there's probably a large group of people that would agree, but I don't personally like that part of it, but that it's reactionary or it's status quo, and that it's about sustaining and preserve. And the enhanced part leads to ideas of proactive measures, but it's almost as if our mission is to keep what we got and not move and not lose, and that might be acceptable, but it's just, it doesn't inspire any growth or any vision.
It's the bare minimum mission.
Well, I think, Commissioner Estabrook, I think you were one that put out one of your words for the vision was about being innovative. I think, forward looking, and although the vision and the mission are different, it seems like there is a place, if that's your values, that actually in carrying out the work of the city and carrying out the vision, that you could be innovative in that space as well, as opposed to being a caretaker. Any other reactions to the current statement? Again, we're going to revisit this as we get further downstream, but
I think the current statement's fine, because I guess in my mind, the vision is an ideal state 10 years or more in the future, and that's how that is. The mission is why you get out of bed every day to go to work. That's why you go to work, and that basically covers it. That's what you do in a city on a daily basis.
I do support some of the key words there: supporting order and protecting public safety. Manhattan pays 80% of the law enforcement and all of the fire coverage here. We contribute to the public health and by our recreation programs, and this was important for me in voting to have a mask ordinance here in Manhattan, because our mission is to promote public health. And so I was glad it was there as something to kind of hang my hat on. Preserve the built environment is, has a kind of a preservation component to it, but yet enhance economic vitality. So that other sentence about regional community, to me, is the forward-thinking component, and the mission sentence is more more things we have to do, and then the second sentence is more aspirational.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Reddy. I think the mission statement, serves its purpose. I would like to use different words to bring forth the same message, because I'm not against what's there. It just sounds boring. And, I think there is more to us. I think to sustain a vibrant community and quality of life, and the Fort Riley has a place where you like to live, work, play, and retire. That sounds like something like I would like to encompass in that.
Yeah.
I want our community to be a place where we can live, work, and retire, and have it while maintaining safety. And safety includes so many things, such as clean water and good roads and good infrastructure and all of these things. So as much as I like the statement, I wish we can make it a little bit more robust, so that we can embrace it and make people be proud of where we live and the services we provide as a city.
Yeah, we could, you could make some adjustments so that getting out of bed in the morning was a little more fun maybe than just getting out of bed for this. Nuts and bolts. Okay, any other comments on the mission statement? Okay, I think we wanted to talk a little bit about, values, and, we don't want to recreate the wheel if we don't have to, but, there are some values that are sort of in city documents, right now, and there's some in the code of ethics. So maybe you're familiar with these, maybe you're not, but if you could just take a look here with the idea, is there anything missing here, or is there something you don't quite understand?
There's in the mission, we talk about built environment and protecting that, and in stewardship, I think there would be potentially a place for talking about being just the the environment, protecting the green space, whatever our land and our environment that we are in jurisdiction of. So it's entrusted to one's care is very vague, but I think there is a appetite that it's a value of the community, and it's, I think, clear across a lot of other communities that are in very conservative areas that's a value. The environment should be part of our embedded in this document somewhere.
As an example. Okay. Any other comments, or do these sort of seem fine and acceptable to continue using them for the time being?
I would just say that maybe Ron can clarify, are the mission and the values or the code of ethics, were they adjusted at the same time, or is the mission older than the code of ethics?
Yeah, the mission was developed back in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And the code of ethics came about in the 2000s.
Yeah.
That was Bob Strom's thing, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yes.
I think they're very basic and fundamental. I don't think you can gussy them up very much. We need to hold with those basic tenets, I think.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that, other than noting Aaron's comment about maybe giving us, like a specific example to the care piece. So, on this next one here, the goals, so we're working our way through the pyramid, the vision, talk about the mission, the values, and then the goals. So, a lot of times we see that, there's a very strong correlation between the goals and the vision. It's just the goals allow you to break down some of those items that you wanted to put into the vision statement and actually make them separate and more specific. Like some of you had like multiple sentiments in your statement or expression. You can pull things out about, a walkable place. Like that can be a goal about creating a more walkable, community. So that is the idea there with the goals. Now, one of the things that I think, and there could be, 3 or 6 or 10 goals that go in the plan that organize a bunch of, projects, policies, and programs. But Sarah, could you go to the next slide? So, when we were talking with all of you kind of one-on-one, there were some sentiments that we think we, gathered. One was that, there's been, a lot of planning, but, this is unique. That you want to make sure that what we're doing for you is, unique and responsive to Manhattan, not some sort of cookie cutter approach. That this sort of inclusive engagement is also important to you. The diversity of the input is important to you as well. So the other part is that when we engage the community, we want to make sure this just isn't, pie in the sky with a bunch of expensive projects for which, there really isn't any known funding for, and we talked about it at the beginning of this meeting, but several of you brought that up in our one-on-ones about we got to have priorities, to this work. And the you're interested in implementation. I mean, that sounds like a blinding flash of the obvious, but there's a lot of plans that don't get implemented, but it's really important to you that we do this in a way that there is action on it. So those were process, things that we heard from you. Is there anything anybody has questions about or want to clarify? But these are what we heard from you related to the process, not the outcomes. Does anybody want a cookie cutter plan? Just kidding. Okay, so that's what we heard from you about process. In terms of outcomes, you also told us some important things. One, that when we establish priorities, we have to think both short-term and long-term. There may be some things that really need attention right away. You want us to create a clear understanding of what the community wants and how it aligns, with the work of the staff and, priorities of the commission. So we know those things don't always line up, but we gotta make sure we're addressing that. There was an interest in making sure that this was done in a way that, the plan outlives who's helping put it together today. That it ought to be that community focused that it can endure, and we agree with that. One of the outcomes that was really important to more than one of you was the physical health of the city. That whatever we come up with should be mindful that it could either improve the physical standing or it could degrade physical standing. So we have to be mindful of that as we go forward. And then similar in terms of resources is the staff capacity. That when we get down the road here in a few months and we start to come together about what we think needs to be done, there needs to be some looking at what the capacities of the staff is to deliver. Just like if it's resources, we've got to look at that as well. There's you know, and you've said it today, like the relationship between, you know, the city and university is very strong, but, you know, there ought to be a really strong strategic plan here that is about the city and its growth and vibrancy that isn't completely dependent upon, you know, the university. And that's hard to do, you know, just given the nature of who you are today, but you wanted us to be thinking that way as we go forward. We need a strategy for future growth. And I think we've heard some comments here today about, well, even if you wanted a lot of growth, you know, you may not be able to get it because you're constrained in order to make that happen. But we need to be thinking about growth because some of you have also said, even here today, that, you know, we have to grow. That's part of, you know, the economic well-being of the community is to have opportunities for growth. There was a discussion about, you know, how much money the city uses to support, you know, external entities to provide services, and that maybe through this process we ought to be thinking about, you know, how that actually works and is it the most, you know, is it the most efficient or structured way to do it? So that's something we want to be thinking about. You know, really being clear about this new tax, you know, how it'll be spent and what are the expectations both internally and externally about how that money could be spent. Business-friendly city, you know, the idea that maybe, you know, I don't know if this be true, but this is just what we heard, like maybe there's some regulations that either could be more favorable to business who want to come here or stay here and make changes, need to find the balance between the regulations and what they might be, you know, coming to ask you for. This one is clearly at the heart of a good strategic plan, and that is, you know, to shape a roadmap with specific steps on, you know, what to achieve and aligning priorities, you know, with budget and resource expectations. And then we were just talking about the mission, but, you know, one of you wanted to make sure that we really were focused on a clear mission, you know, taking care of the basics, but, you know, what can we do to be contributing, you know, above and beyond that as it relates to the quality of life and quality of place. Even before we shared demographic information, you know, there was an issue raised with us about how do we make sure we're, you know, really attractive to young professionals who might come here for a job and or might want to stay here after they're, you know, done with their education. You know, what do we need to do to make sure we have that an attractive place for those folks? And then a model for how the city can grow in a way that funds itself. This is about fiscal sustainability. You know, what do we need to do to make sure that our choices are things that we can pay for or earn revenue in a way that makes sure we're here into the future. So those are some substantive things that you told us about outcomes. And I guess, you know, I'm going to pause here and see if anybody wants to comment or question, you know, what's in front of them here. Hopefully you recognize it. It seems like good stuff to me. I mean, I'm you know, I'm good, thoughtful outcomes.
I think, Commissioner Butler, I think it's a great list. I don't have a problem with anything on there. I mean, you know, some of those could be fleshed out. Like I like that last one. You know, a model for how the city can grow in a way that funds itself. You know, but you could put a little sub bullet on there like debt management. You know, the city debt is one thing, and then, you know, the way the mill levy and the way we plan the budget underneath there. But do all that, we'd have a great plan.
Great, yes.
I was just gonna say, I don't see anything that specifically mentions Fort Riley or military or any of that in this, and path forward that isn't dependent on the university or Fort Riley, I would add, I think is kind of, that's back to what we talked about earlier, just a way forward for the city, or a way to be not so dependent.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, we're gonna, again, we're cooking this up, and so we're gonna, just like the, the values, we're gonna carry these forward. They're gonna get refined. There may be some new ones, a little more definition on some of them, but we're gonna carry these forward as being, important to you in terms of outcomes of this process. But I would like you to think for a minute, if these do become like the outcomes, and the sentiments that you expressed about the vision become embedded in the vision, then what could hold us back from these outcomes or that vision? What could really be things that we need to be mindful of as we go forward? So could you take just a couple minutes, maybe jot down some ideas about what could hold us back from realizing some of these outcomes that are important to you? I'll just give you just a couple minutes, and then we'll jump back in. Just another minute. Okay, so Sarah, maybe you can take down the slide just for a few minutes here. Great. So what I'd like to do is maybe I'll call on you one at a time, and you can just give me one thing. We'll do that as many times as you have stuff, or until you can't tolerate it anymore. Commissioner Hadasal, like, what is one thing that you think could hold us back from being successful here, the community?
I would say um, too narrow of community input to where a bunch of people feel like they weren't heard and only a select group of people were heard, and somebody else is this is somebody else's vision for the community, not really theirs or everybody's.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Reddy, one thing that could hold us back.
Unfunded state and federal mandates.
Ouch. Right, thank you. Commissioner Morse.
That was one of mine. So we just canceled one. Flat or declining revenue.
Okay. Mayor?
Here, you know, the thing that came to mind for me is just fortitude, inability to say no.
To people who ask for city resources, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and that's been what I've noticed the past 10 years. We don't have the fortitude and the ability to say no.
Okay, good. Commissioner Estabrook?
Intergovernmental cooperation.
Okay.
Thinking
Commissioner
beyond.
Haddisell? I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Aaron. No, go ahead.
Lack of.
Commissioner Haddisell, do you have something could hold us back?
Yeah, I think if, we want to be able to grow and stuff outside of K-State and Fort Riley, but if K-State doesn't turn their number of students around on campus in Manhattan soon, that's going to create a dwindling spiral of continue to sit empty rental places and decreasing sales tax, and yeah, those are the things that are we've got to figure out. Yeah, if we need to grow outside of K-State so we can fill up the housing, and so we can get the sales tax back up, or get people to come to town to visit. If there's no football games and there's not 50,000 people coming to town several times a year, we're gonna have a hard time with our transient guest tax and everything. We need to get people to town somehow.
Right, good. Thank you. Commissioner Reddy?
Along the same lines, I think we are without K-State or Fort Riley, we are not Manhattan. So
Right.
I feel like we have a transient population and we need to work harder on embracing that and being a part of that.
Right. That could hold us back if we don't, it sounds like. Commissioner Morse?
I actually think a culture of negativity, where people feel as a group, as a whole, right? You know, over the years there have been certain one side or another, and you know, we kind of go down the middle. But if that negativity were to take over in a large way, then we would lose our sense of vision. We would lose hope for the future. So I think that how we think about the future is important.
Yeah, no, thank you. Mayor, do you have another?
Yeah, I get back to, you know, something I've talked about for 10 years, which is, you know, priorities. We have an inability to list priorities in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And then focus on number one. And what we'll end up doing is say, oh, we're going to do number one, but then we put all the money on number 5.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. And when you have this strategic plan, you're going to end up with some priorities in it. And we've got to have the ability to actually stick to them. And that means we're not going to be able to do everything.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Commissioner Estabrook?
So along the lines of with the university thoughts, the future of higher education, how it's delivered, it impacts us greatly. If it's more remote, what that looks like, and just the future of higher education.
Yeah, that's good. So we've been around twice, but is there something on any of your lists that you just want to really get out there?
Well, I think we can't just tread water and be stagnant. We have to keep moving forward. What I've seen is that Manhattan, my world isn't like you know what's happening around the country. We tend to know what's happening in Kansas and our region. But it seems to me that Manhattan has done some wonderful things, but other communities end up, I don't want to say it negatively, but copying it, and suddenly they've got the same amenities we do. And in order for us to keep moving forward, we have to come up with some more and additional, and some, I mean, some are a lot more expensive than others. Emporia has developed a, what is their disc golf? It's like they've developed it over a number of years, and it's world famous now. Or people come from thousands of people come, and some. I mean, I've been amazed at pickleball, for example. Right. But so some things require a lot of money to support the infrastructure, and others, are pretty cheap. And it's knowing what ones to go for at any one time, what the dollar potential is for. And I don't mean just dollar, but we want people to be happy in our world too, with sidewalks and be we just want the best for our community.
Jamie, so the question is about what types of things could obstacles be?
Yeah, what could hold us back from realizing our potential? You guys had a list outcomes, of vision, like what could keep us from realizing that?
I just want to, that's what I was making sure, but the things that we haven't, the only thing that I can think of that we haven't listed is national policies, and that can be around national security. We've had tremendous problems when Fort Riley was moved, or our brigades were moved out of Fort Riley, and then also during wartime. That impacts us in a way that we can't control as deployments evolve. And then actually we had to shut down a school for a while, for a period of time, that such an impact. The other part is the economic crisis. We've been resilient in Manhattan through the housing crisis, and now looks pretty resilient through the pandemic so far economically, but those are not necessarily things we can control, but they are certainly obstacles of us implementing our goals.
No, for sure it could hold you back. Anybody else have something they want to share? Okay. So I guess in terms of this conversation about the outcomes and the interest in priorities, I'd love to do just a simple straw poll here, today, non-binding. But Sarah, can we go back to that that list? So this is the same list, it just has numbers instead of bullets on there. Do you think that you could look at this list and identify 5 of the top outcomes for you? And again, this is just just checking in, top of mind, where you are today. But could you write down the numbers of 5 of these?
Also, Jamie, people added a few, through our discussion. So if there's something that was added after this list, you could use that as well.
Be number X.
Okay, I can go first, speed things along if you like. I wrote my five, so if you've got a
Okay.
pencil
Yeah, Mayor,
handy.
yeah, Mayor, could you hang just a second? So Sarah or Cyril, could you tally these up, and we're gonna go through each commissioner quickly, and then you can tell us where these actually fall out. All right? Okay. Okay, Mayor, sounds like you're ready.
Okay, I'll just go right down and give you the numbers, 4, 8, 9, 10, and 14.
Great. Who would like to go next? Commissioner Morse, are you ready? I need to unmute again. You're doing a good job of impersonating me.
My phone was ringing, so I turned it off. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was a robocall.
Yeah.
1, 5, 9, 11, and 14.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Estabrook?
2, 11, 1, 5, 6.
2, 11, 1, 5, 6. Okay. Commissioner Hadisall?
1, 7, 10, 11, and 13.
Okay. And Commissioner Reddy?
1, 2, 3, 4, and 11.
Okay. Now we'll let the drum roll. I heard a number of ones and 11s and 14s, but Sarah, are you there?
I'm trying to add it up. I need a second. Yeah.
Yeah, the commissioners are fast reporters.
Okay.
You ready?
I think so. Maybe Cyril did this in a more scientific way. I just quickly wrote it down here. But it looks like number 1 and number 11 tied for 4 responses, 4 endorsements of the item 1 and item 11. And then we had quite a few ties with two mentions. So that was outcome 2, 4, 5, 9, 10, and 14.
Okay.
And then one mention was number 3, 6, 7, 8, and 13. And number 12 got no mentions. No votes.
All right. Well, again, we just wanted to take a straw poll here to see, you know, how you were feeling. Clearly, there's a couple of these that there's really strong alignment on amongst yourselves. So, like everything else that we've discussed today, you know, we'll put together a summary memo of what happened today, but we will include the tabulations here for you on these initial thoughts about outcomes. Sarah, you can take this down if you want. We can all be back up here. So I think we're close to wrapping up here, but before we do, is there anything on your minds about this process or the community that you just want to make sure we share, today?
I just want to be sure that the public has, I want to be sure that they are engaged and that they come forward. And I'm not sure when you say the word strategic planning that it's glitzy enough to get their attention.
Right.
Because, we could head down a road that the public doesn't support. because they didn't come, and so there, it's hard to gauge when we've got the right mix.
Yeah.
But the more public we hear from, the better.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good plug for the crossroads. We don't want to go down the wrong.
Yeah. But I think you're right, Commissioner Morris. Like, we're gonna be asking people to participate in the Crossroads initiative, not the strategic plan. I mean, if they ask, well, what is Crossroads? You say, well, it's a strategic, it's something like that. But we're not leading with that language for the very reason I think that you mentioned. And we'll be the first ones to be clear that this is a self-selected process that's going to happen here. People are going to choose or not choose. But the goal that we have, with Jared and the group he's put together is to make participation in Crossroads a choice. People may not want to do it, but it's not because they didn't know it was going on or they didn't have a chance to do it. So we're going to work really hard at that because we think the credibility is in large part based on, how we do the process.
We want to attract lots of people, tell them that Crossroads is the plan for how the commission intends to spend their money for the next 10 years. Get a lot of participation.
I see a lot of head nodding out there.
Well, this is Commissioner Reddy. I think what you'll find is a lot of people in Manhattan like Manhattan. We like the place we live in. My neighbors, like the place they live in. Anywhere I go, there's very few complaints about Manhattan. It is a family-friendly environment. But because this is a focused strategic engagement plan for the future of Manhattan, I think you will find people interested in being part of that. And see, because there's a lot of people that have roots here, that have ownership of Manhattan and are concerned about certain sectors or certain things that might impact their children or maybe their families in some way, and want to participate in making it a better community for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it might be. So I think you'll get good responses, and whatever critical criticism we might get is room for improvement. That's part of the evolutionary process for growing as a community. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. I think I want to see where we want to see ourselves, where are we at right now, and where do we see ourselves in 10, 15, 20 years. We won't, the commissioners that are here on Zoom will not be here making those decisions. And the previous commissioners, although we didn't have a strategic plan, brought us this far. And we are in a happy place, but we have other challenges and we need to not be status quo. So I'm looking for some innovative ideas from all of them. And I think Manhattanites are cognizant of the financial impact to their taxes. This is the same community that passed a $99 million bond issue for our schools, that passed a sales tax over and over, whether it's for pools or whether it's for the zoo or whether it's for the sales parks and rec, whatever it might be. And I think they understand the financial impact of their decisions. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. I think what you did today is really good. I like the way you planned it out for us. And I hope that's the way, I feel like that's the way you will present it to our community, with one piece at a time, so they're part of it. And nobody should feel judged on their comments or responses. And I think you've shown that it's not a place for judgment or assumptions, but to put into our strategic plan as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think different segments of our community speak on different issues. So some of them speak on taxes, some of them speak on what they want with regard to recreational facilities. We're kind of where it all comes together. I appreciate the effort you've made and the way you've organized it. I think you've gotten the essence out of us for what you need to have to go forward.
Thank you.
One quick question there. I know there's like a website potentially, any idea about when that might be rolling out?
Yeah, we are hoping to get it out this week, no later than Thursday, because we do have the community committee meeting on Thursday night, and we'd love to be able to pull it up. At least some initial, it'll evolve, but we want to have some initial information. And I have, we've started that design process, and I've got some information to Jared to review with his team, some FAQs and some initial key messages and things. So that's forthcoming soon this week.
Will the community meetings be on, public also?
I believe so, Jared, right?
Yeah, the city commission did appoint the community project committee, so those will be open to the public, while they're virtual. They'll be televised, in the future. We may be having these meetings in the public for the public to attend at like the Hilton Conference Center or areas where we can spread out, as well as the public rounds of engagement, hopefully in May. Like we were talking about, we can find some big spaces with, of course, if the requirements are still there, the approval of the Riley County Health Department to pursue those, but create those opportunities.
Well, I know I speak for Sarah and Cyril that we're really grateful that you've entrusted us to help you with this process, and we especially appreciate this afternoon after your big afternoon last Friday. So again, we're really grateful to be helping you and look forward to how this plays out over the next few months. So is this Sarah or Jared here?
No, I think I was just gonna say a few wrap up things, but Aaron kind of prompted just to let you guys know the kickoff of the website and publicity campaign is forthcoming. We do have that community committee meeting on the 4th, and then Jared's working on getting us the staff technical committee meeting sometime the week of the 8th. And then, like we mentioned earlier, beginning these staff and stakeholder interviews. So, if ideas come to you about folks we should be talking to, please get your ideas through Jared. And like I said, we will be, the idea is that not this full version, but we will be asking the community committee some of these same questions, because we want to be aligning, as we go through. So we're going to have a similar meeting, although more simplified, with them next week, and then we'll be sharing back some stuff for you to to look at, and then again we're keeping our eye on the first round of public engagement in March, and more information about how that's going to look in the next couple weeks.
And the only thing I have from the wrap-up perspective is we're going to be leaning on you all, you 5, our city commissioners, because you have such a broad reach to our community. So once we get those websites live, we're going to do our best to use our social media and other methods. I'll be working with Vivian, and we'll be working with our community project committee to reach their populations and those individuals that they know. I don't have a lot of Twitter followers myself, so I'm going to be looking to you all and your listservs and your many followers on social media as well to reach the public, to get people involved, because that is the most important part. And we'll keep you up to date on that and let you know when those things occur. And I'll be sure to keep updating you every Tuesday night along the way as well. But please feel free to keep communicating to me throughout the process. And Ron and Jason, Dennis, Vivian, all of us, Kristen.
Great. Well, I think that's a wrap. If there's nothing else, we appreciate your time, and you get a little bit of a time rebate this afternoon, which is always nice.
Okay, appreciate everybody's effort today. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.